Chapter 102. Yan Tingting was quite famous among the younger generation of the Northern Yan martial arts world. Of course, this fame wasn't because of her strength, but because of her protective father. Yan Huainan himself was an ambitious and ruthless person. In the past, the Divine Martial School was just an ordinary school in the south of Yan Kingdom, and it was not qualified to be one of the 7 sects and 8 groups. It was even ridiculed and laughed at by others because the name of the school was Divine Martial School. However, after Yan Huainan took over the Divine Martial Arts sect, he used more than 20 years to increase the influence of the Divine Martial Arts sect by several times, making the Divine Martial Arts sect truly become a top-notch force in the Jianghu and one of the 7 sects and 8 factions. Maybe because Yan Huainan spent most of his time cultivating and working for the sect, he didn't get close to women when he was young. That was why he didn't have any children. When Yan Huainan was more than 50 years old, he finally had a son, Yan Tingting. Of course, Yan Huainan had reached the 3rd level of spirit focus and condensed the true elixir of martial path. He was not old at 50 years old. He was just in his prime. He even looked like he was in his early 40s. Because he had a son in his old age, and it was a daughter, Yan Huainan doted on Yan Tingting from a young age. This made the young lady of the Divine Might sect spoiled and unreasonable. She was even called the Little Witch in the south of Yan Kingdom. No one dared to provoke her. However, it was also because of her willful and rebellious nature that she didn't fancy any of the handsome young men that Yan Huainan introduced to her. Instead, she fell in love with Yu Luchuan, who was good-looking and knew how to win the hearts of girls. Yan Huainan naturally did not approve of this marriage. How could an ambitious and ruthless person like him fall for an embroidered pillow like Yu Luchuan? But he couldn't do anything about his daughter. He couldn't stand being pestered by Yan Tingting, so he had to agree for the time being. At this time, Yan Tingting was happily leading her people up the mountain. She was thinking that when they arrived at the Yu family, she would ask Brother Yu to play around the East Yan Kingdom with her. She was so bored staying in the Divine Might sect. At this time, there was another group of people behind them going up the mountain. It was Nye Donglu and his people from the Righteous Manor. It was common for families to be destroyed in Jianghu. As a big sect in East Yan, the Morgue village would not care about such things. At most they would just collect some information. However, the relationship between the Yu clan and the Yijia manor was not bad. Yu Luchuan had always treated him with respect, so Nye Donglu was embarrassed to turn a blind eye to him. Moreover, after the treasure hunt at LV Yongshan, he fought with Bai Wuji and searched for Chu Xiu with no results. Nye Donglu returned to the morgue for a period of seclusion and successfully broke through to the inner invulnerability realm. This time, he came out to exercise and stabilize his cultivation. Moreover, the news said that this matter was related to the Blue Dragon Society. This attracted the attention of the morgue, so he personally led his men and traveled through the night to the Bailing mansion. The people from the Divine Martial sect looked at Nye Donglio's group cautiously. After realizing that they were from the morgue, they let down their guard a little. The reputation of the morgue was there. It did not matter if the other party was loyal or not. In broad daylight, the morgue would definitely not do anything that would damage their reputation. Moreover, the sect leader of the Divine Martial sect, Yan Huainan, was friends with the morgue village master, Nye Renlong. When Yan Tingting saw Nye Donglu, she raised her eyebrows and said, "Nye Donglu, what are you doing here?" Yan Tingting did not like Nye Donglu because her father had tried to matchmake her with Nye Donglu. After all, among the young talents of the Northern Yan, Nye Donglu was the youngest, but he was the most famous. Yan Huainan admired him a lot. However, Yan Huainan's admiration was useless. Yan Tingting did not like people like Nye Donglu, who had to think 3 times before saying a sentence. She thought that he was too cunning and uninteresting. Nye Donglu felt the same way. He looked down on unruly and willful women like Yan Tingting. With Nye Donglio's methods and strength, when did he need to use marriage to ensure his status? Therefore, he looked down on Yan Tingting even more. Because of this, after sensing Nye Donglio's attitude, Yan Tingting was even more displeased with him. In her mind, only she could look down on him. Since when was it his turn to look down on her? If it was someone else, Yan Tingting would definitely cause trouble for him. However, he was the young master of the morgue village. Even if she wanted to cause trouble for him, the people from the Divine Martial sect would not play along with her. Although the matter was settled, Yan Tingting still did not like Nye Donglu. Just like now, his words were full of sarcasm. However, Nie Donglu did not show any displeasure on his face. Instead, he asked with a strange expression, "You don't know?" Yen Tingting asked in surprise, "What do I know?" Nie Donglu shook his head. "You'll know when we get to the Bailing mansion." As he spoke, Nie Donglu did not stop. He walked up the mountain path. "Ridiculous!" Yen Tingting snorted coldly and followed behind Nie Donglu with her people. After entering the Bailing mansion, the clan masters of the Bailing mansion welcomed them at the entrance. They were the ones who reported the news about the Yu clan in great detail. They also knew that Nie Donglu would come personally. "Greetings, young master." Nie Donglu waved his hand and said, "No need for formalities. Let's go to the Yu clan mansion. Are the corpses preserved?" The clan masters quickly nodded and said, "They're all preserved. There's no damage." Yen Tingting, who was behind them, heard their conversation and her expression immediately became unnatural. "Yu clan mansion? Corpses?" An uneasy feeling suddenly appeared in her heart. Yen Tingting quickly pulled Nie Donglu back and said, "Hey, Nie Donglu! What's going on? Who died in the Yu clan?" Nie Donglu shook his head and said, "You'll know when we get to the Yu clan." As he spoke, Nie Donglu's arm moved slightly and shook off Yen Tingting. He followed the clan masters into the Yu clan mansion. Yen Tingting followed closely behind Nie Donglu with an angry expression. When they arrived at the Yu clan mansion and pushed the door open, a thick stench of blood and stench assaulted their nostrils. For a warrior like Nie Donglu who often killed people, this was nothing. However, for a young mistress like Yen Tingting who grew up in a greenhouse, this stench almost made her vomit. One of the warriors said respectfully, "Young master, the corpses of all the Yu clan's direct descendants are here. Most of them killed each other. Yu Henian and the others were killed by the Blue Dragon Society's assassins. I've already preserved the corpses separately." Nie Donglu nodded. Yen Tingting's expression suddenly changed. She rushed over and grabbed the warrior's collar. Her eyes were red as she shouted, "What did you say? All the Yu clan's direct descendants are dead? Where's brother Yu? Where's Yu Luchuan?" That warrior was still a clan master of a small clan. Now that his collar was being grabbed by a little girl, he also showed an angry expression. However, at this time, Nie Donglu said indifferently, "She's the daughter of the divine martial sex Yen Huainan, Yen Tingting." Hearing this, the warrior's expression immediately collapsed. He said carefully, "The Yu clan's people are all dead. Yu Luchuan was also beheaded. However, we've already made an ice coffin and preserved it." Hearing this, Yen Tingting immediately felt as if she was struck by lightning. She stood there dumbfounded, her eyes instantly turning red as big tears rolled down her cheeks. The two elders beside her who were in charge of taking care of her were anxious, but there was nothing they could do. With this young mistress's temper, they didn't even dare to coax her. "Impossible! Impossible! You must be lying to me!" Yen Tingting roared at the warrior. The warrior said helplessly, "Miss Yen, we really wouldn't dare to lie to you. Yu Luchuan's ice coffin is over there. There are people in charge of changing the ice coffin every day to ensure that the body is intact." Yen Tingting walked into the courtyard and saw the ice coffin containing Yu Luchuan's body. She immediately laid on top of it and wailed loudly. Nie Donglu, who was standing at the side, raised his eyebrows. That trash Yu Luchuan actually made this unruly girl fall in love with him? This was really not easy. This girl was not a good person. She had turned the south of Yen upside down. Countless people had died because of her. How did Yu Luchuan hook up with her? However, Nie Donglu didn't think too much about it. He wasn't interested in these methods of pleasing women. He just said to a warrior in his 40s beside him in a deep voice, "Uncle Ping, please check the bodies. If there are no problems, we will leave after offering our condolences." Nie Donglu only brought people to check the situation because it was related to the Blue Dragon Society. Otherwise, he would only be here to pay his respects. The middle-aged man walked over and checked one by one. Suddenly, he came over and said, "Young master, I discovered something. The knife marks left by the Blue Dragon Society assassin are exactly the same as the ones left by the Chu Xiu during the pursuit of Chu Xiu." Nie Donglu was shocked. He hurriedly said, "Uncle Ping, are you sure that the killer was Chu Xiu?" This Uncle Ping in front of him was a member of the memorial village. Although he was only at the Xiantian realm, His master was an inspector of the Guanzhong torture room. He was best at deducing the opponent's strength, weapons, martial arts, and even habits from all kinds of marks. Although this Uncle Ping's strength was average, he was already 80% as good as his master in this aspect. Chapter 103. Faced with Nie Donglio's questioning, Uncle Ping only shook his head and said, "Young master, you misunderstood me. I only said that the saber marks were the same as the ones left by Chu Xiao. However, I don't mean that the killer was definitely Chu Xiao. It could be someone else who used Chu Xiao's saber to kill them." Nie Donglu said in a deep voice, "Are you sure that the weapon used to kill these Yu clan people is the same saber Chu Xiao used in the past?" Uncle Ping's face revealed a hint of pride as he said, "Young master, you might not know this, but in the eyes of most warriors, the scars on the wounds don't reveal much. However, for people like us who are proficient in this field, we can see a lot of information from them. The weapon Chu Xiao used was a 4th revolution to 6th revolution precious weapon. Weapons of this level cannot be mass-produced. They must be personally forged by a master blacksmith before they can be named. It is an existence that cannot be replicated. Even if the same master blacksmith used the same materials and the same method to forge 2 identical precious weapons, in reality, there would still be some subtle differences. Therefore, I am 100% sure that this saber is Chu Xiao's saber. However, as for the person, I am not so sure. This is because I saw the strange grappling hand that Chu Xiao used on these corpses, as well as his own evil saber technique. However, most of the corpses were demonic martial arts. Moreover, the person who killed them was not an innate, but an internal invulnerability expert. Therefore, from the looks of it, it could be Chu Xiao's senior or someone related to him who used his weapon to kill them. This is also possible." Nie Donglio's eyes revealed a strange look. Since Uncle Ping had already said this, Nie Donglu could be sure that the killer was Chu Xiao. He had investigated Chu Xiao's information. He did not have a master, and when he fought for the secret box, he was already at the peak of the innate stage. It was normal for him to have stepped into the internal invulnerability stage. However, for some reason, Chu Xiao had actually joined the Blue Dragon Society. This made Nie Donglu feel a little troubled. After thinking about it, Nie Donglu said to Uncle Ping, "Uncle Ping, take some people to Linzhong Commandery later and tell them that Chu Xiao is no longer wanted. Whether they want to pursue Chu Xiao is up to them. In any case, Chu Xiao Manor won't do anything anymore." Hearing this, Uncle Ping was stunned. "Young master, the Blue Dragon Society only has one Sky Sin branch in the east of Yan province. There's no need to be so afraid of them, right? Chu Xiao is just an ordinary killer of the Blue Dragon Society." Nie Donglu shook his head and said, "He wiped out an entire clan single-handedly. From now on, Chu Xiao is no ordinary assassin. Moreover, I'm not afraid of the Sky Sin branch, but the entire Blue Dragon Society. There are some things you don't understand. 3 years ago, the Blue Dragon Society's Sky Sin branch was wiped out. Even I don't know much about some of the secrets involved. However, even if you think about it in the dumbest way, you can figure it out. The Blue Dragon Society only has 36 Big Dipper branches, but one of them was killed in one night. Isn't this a big deal?" After that, the head of the Blue Dragon Society, the Crescent Green Dragon, Butian Nan, who was ranked 9th on the Wind and Cloud list, personally went to the Northern Yen. That battle involved many powerful forces in the Northern Yen, such as the Floating Snow City of the Extreme North, the Divine Martial Gate of the south of Yen Province, the Huangfu clan of the Pingyao of the Yen Province, and even the Great Brightness Temple of the Northern Buddhist sect. After that battle, the Blue Dragon Society didn't make any moves. They only sent a new branch leader to the Northern Yen. However, the other powerful forces also turned a blind eye to the Blue Dragon Society's actions. They even warned their disciples that as long as the Blue Dragon Society doesn't provoke them, they shouldn't provoke the Blue Dragon Society. Nie Donglu looked at Uncle Ping and said, "At that time, my mortuary village did not get involved. My father also told me to do so. The conflict between the Green Dragon Group, one of the 4 spirits, and the big sects of the Northern Yen Kingdom is not something we can speculate about. No matter who wins or loses that battle, it is obvious that the matter is over. The Blue Dragon Society just sent a branch leader. Clearly, the powerful forces in the Northern Yen may have made an agreement with the Blue Dragon Society, or they tacitly agreed to it, but now they don't want to have any conflict with the Blue Dragon Society. Otherwise, The rumor that the head of the Blue Dragon Society is temperamental and temperamental might come to the Northern Yen again. Chu Xiao was lucky to be able to join the Blue Dragon Society this time. I'll let him go for now. In fact, ever since Chu Xiao escaped their pursuit last time, Nie Donglu knew he wouldn't be able to catch him. Now that Chu Xiao had joined the Blue Dragon Society, it was even more troublesome. Chu Xiao wasn't important, but his identity as a member of the Blue Dragon Society and the sensitivity of the Heavenly Sin branch. For the sake of the big picture, they had to put aside the matter of hunting down Chu Xiao for now. However, at this time, Yen Tingting's side had completely collapsed. She began to curse at the Blue Dragon Society, saying that she would bring the Gate of God's Might to destroy the Blue Dragon Society. However, she was stopped by two experts from the Gate of God's Might. Back then, the Gate of God's Might had also interfered in the matters of the Blue Dragon Society. Naturally, they knew the inside story. If they went to find trouble with the Blue Dragon Society, it would be the Gate of God's Might that would fight to the death with the Blue Dragon Society. If the people of the Blue Dragon Society touched Yen Tingting, then it would be fine. However, the other party was an assassin organization. They only killed a piece of trash that had no status with Yen Tingting. If they provoked the Blue Dragon Society because of this piece of trash, then the Gate of God's Might would really be an idiot. In fact, if Yen Huainan knew about this matter, he might even thank the people of the Blue Dragon Society for helping. After all, he didn't like Yu Luchuan for a long time. However, he was afraid that his daughter would hate him, so he didn't do anything to separate them. Now that someone helped him, he couldn't ask for more. A strange light flickered in Ye Donglio's eyes as he walked over. The dead can't be brought back to life. Tingting, please restrain your grief and go get your revenge on the Azure Dragon Society. I advise you to put that thought to rest. Yen Tingting glared at Nie Donglu. Are you here to make fun of me? Nie Dong wore a helpless expression and said, I was a good friend of Brother Yu. Wouldn't I be sad that he's dead? I've also guessed the identity of the assassin from the Blue Dragon Society who killed Brother Yu. It's Chu Xiao, the one who stole the secret box from me. That's why I have a grudge against him. However, now that Chu Xiao has joined the Blue Dragon Society, especially the Heavenly Sin branch, whose identity is extremely sensitive, I don't dare to make a move recklessly. I can only revoke the warrant. Regarding the Azure Dragon Society, your House of Divine Might should know a lot more than I do, so you don't have to think too much about it. Gate Master Yen might let you do as you please in other areas, but he won't allow you to mess around in this kind of thing. Alright, I'll cut to the chase. I was planning to settle Brother Yu's funeral, but since you're here, I'll leave it to you. After saying this, Nie Donglu left straight away. He knew Yen Huainan wouldn't let Yen Tingting act recklessly, at least not for now. He told Yen Tingting everything just to plant a thorn in her heart. The identity of the Blue Dragon Society could protect Chu Xiao for a while, but it couldn't protect him forever. Meanwhile, Yen Tingting's face was filled with hatred as she mumbled the name Chu Xiao. A few days later, the news of the Yu clan's annihilation spread throughout the Linzhong commandery. Even the entire East Yen heard some news. After all, the Yu clan was not an ordinary, small aristocratic family. After it was annihilated, it caused a huge commotion. Especially after Nie Donglu confirmed that the killer was a new member of the Blue Dragon Society, Chu Xiao. The killer was only an inner aura realm warrior, which was very shocking. Moreover, because the Yu clan still had some surviving henchmen and stewards, they told the details of the Yu clan's annihilation in detail. Hearing these details, some people couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. Ordinary killers use knives to kill, but Chu Xiao from the Blue Dragon Society's Heavenly Sin branch used people's hearts. The people of the Yu clan had died in Chu Xiao's hands, and had also died in their hearts. Among the thousands of Yu clan's warriors, less than 1/10 of them died in Chu Xiao's hands. Most of them died in the hands of their own people. Even when they died, they were confused and didn't know why they died. Some of the martial artists in the East of Yen dynasty gave Chu Xiao a nickname for such a terrifying and strange technique. He was called Blood Demon. His methods were as cruel as a demon, and blood flowed like a river. Blood Demon Chu Xiao. Before Chu Xiao returned to the Blue Dragon Society, his nickname Blood Demon had already spread to the East Yen Jianghu, and even to the Northern Yen branch of Wind Sweeping Building. Chapter 104. The headquarters of Wind Sweeping Tower was located in the most prosperous region of Eastern Qi, but they had branches in West Chu and Northern Yan. They were located in the capital cities of Northern Yan and West Chu, and they were responsible for the affairs of these two countries. The leader of the Northern Yan branch, three-eyed god Qi Yuanli, was in his 50s. He had a square face and wore a brocade robe, but he had a lazy aura. His favorite activity was to hold the purple clay teapot that he had kept for more than 30 years, basking in the sun while reading the reports from the various Northern Yan regions. He was like an old man in his twilight years. There was a thin red mark on Qi Yuanli's forehead that looked like a third eye. This was also the reason why he was nicknamed Three-Eyed God. It meant that he could observe the movements of the martial world with his third eye. But in fact, the mark on Qi Yuanli's forehead was left behind by a powerful finger force when he was fighting with someone in his early years. Although he managed to kill his opponent in that battle, his opponent's finger force had almost caused his head to explode and his skull to almost shatter. The Zhonghu divine doctor who saved Qi Yuanli later said that it was really inconceivable that Qi Yuanli was able to survive such an injury. It was also because of that time that Qi Yuanli always said that he was a person who had died once. He could feel the feeling of death, so now his favorite thing was to bask in the sun. Only the warm temperature of the sun could make him feel that he was still alive and a living person. Just as Qi Yuanli was squinting and leisurely basking in the sun, a cultivator in his 30s walked over and cupped his hands. "Tower Lord, the Linzhong County branch has sent a message that requires your personal approval." Qi Yuanli took the report and casually waved his hand. "How many times have I told you? I'm just the deputy leader. The real leader isn't here. Don't talk nonsense." The martial artist from Wind-Sweeping Tower only smiled and did not reply. There were no idiots in the anemophilia business. They were all smart people. Was the deputy leader not the leader? If he really called him the deputy leader, it would probably be even more irritating to Qi Yuanli. Qi Yuanli took the report and flipped through it. He softly said, "The Linzhong County branch is actually recommending a martial artist from the martial world to enter the Longhu leaderboard? It's really interesting." The Wind-Sweeping Tower's Dragon and Tiger ranking was only prepared for a few of the young elites of the pugilistic world. Because of the lack of resources, 70% of the martial artists on the Dragon and Tiger ranking were from large sects and aristocratic families. Only those martial artists who were born into a good family and had a solid foundation would be able to stand out in their youth and make a name for themselves. It was extremely difficult for martial artists who were born in the wilderness to stand out. The person recommended by the Forested Commandery's Wind-Sweeping Pavilion branch was none other than Chu Xiao. Even with Qi Yuanli's experience, he couldn't help but sigh when he saw Chu Xiao's series of astonishing achievements. It had been a long time since he had seen such a fierce young man. Especially the battle where Chu Xiao used his identity as a member of the Blue Dragon Society to destroy the Yu clan. It was even more stunning. He made use of the Yu clan's weakness in their hearts and finally defeated them. The Northern Yan pugilistic world actually produced such a stunning young man. It's not bad, but it's a pity. Who knows if he will still be able to stand at the top of the pugilistic world after 20 years and enter the Dragon and Tiger ranking. Qi Yuanli's sigh wasn't because he looked down on Chu Xiao. It was because the Wind-Sweeping Pavilion had calculated the number of young elites on the Dragon and Tiger ranking. Every generation of the Dragon and Tiger ranking would last for 20 years, but in reality, it would only last for 10 years. In these 10 years, these young elites would either die prematurely, become influential figures who could stir up the pugilistic world, or be pushed down by the newcomers. There was almost no one who could stay on the Dragon and Tiger ranking for 20 years. There were only 100 people on the Dragon and Tiger ranking in every generation, and among these 100 people, the death rate was as high as 40%. This was an extremely horrifying number. Every generation of young martial artists would die. However, the Longhu list was like a tall tree that attracted the wind. They were the ones who died the fastest. Among those who died prematurely, those who were born in the large sects were still fine. After all, they had the protection of their backers. The ones who had the highest death rate were people like Chu Xiao, who was born in the wilderness. Of course, although Chu Xiao was born in the wilderness, he had now joined the Blue Dragon Society, so he could be considered to have the support of the Blue Dragon Society. Otherwise, Nie Donglu would not have withdrawn his wanted order. Moreover, the information said that the daughter of the Divine Martial sect leader, Yan Tingting, was still clamoring about killing her way to the Blue Dragon Society's branch and killing Chu Xiao. In the end, she was confined by her father. The warrior from the Wind-Sweeping Pavilion beside him said, "Leader, according to this Chu Xiao's achievements, he is definitely qualified to be on the Dragon and Tiger ranking. The only thing we need to determine now is what his ranking should be. Qi Yuanli asked back, "What do you think it should be?" The warrior said directly, "Chu Xiao has already stepped into the internal aura realm, and he even destroyed the Yu clan by himself. With this kind of strength and achievements, it is enough for him to be in the top 10. Qi Yuanli shook his head and said, "It is enough for him to be in the top 10, but he should not be in the top 10. The warrior was puzzled and asked, "Why?" When Nye Donglu first entered the ranking, he was in the top 20. After the battle of the 18 Black Cloud strongholds, he was in the top 10. Now, Chu Xiao's achievements may not be any less than Nye Donglio's. Logically speaking, he should also be in the top 10. Qi Yuanli patted the cultivator's shoulder and said, "The Dragon Tiger Sovereign List. Our wind-sweeping pavilion naturally wants to be absolutely fair. Unfortunately, this is the way of the world. There are some things that cannot be taken too seriously. When our wind-sweeping pavilion first established a branch in the Northern Yen, the righteous manor helped us a lot. This is a favor that we need to repay." This Chu Xiao's influence was indeed big enough, but in terms of influence, it was only around the Eastern Yen region. It did not even affect the Northern Yen region, let alone the entire Jianghu. Moreover, the influence that Nye Donglu had caused shook the entire Jianghu. In fact, the overall strength of the 18 Black Cloud strongholds was not as strong as the Yu clan. The reason why he could obtain such a reputation was because he was the young master of the righteous manor. "Xiao Lin, you are one of the people I have high hopes for. In the field of anemophilia, it is not easy. We know too many things, and there are even more taboos. Hence, even if you know some things, you have to keep it to yourself and not say it for the rest of your life. In this Jianghu, there is no such thing as fairness. What our wind-sweeping pavilion can do is to be as fair as possible. This Chu Xiao's ranking cannot be in the top 10. He can only be in the top 20. Let him be in the 18th place." Xiao Lin said hesitantly, "But the 18th place is by Wuji from the northern floating snow city. Wouldn't that push by Wuji down by one place?" Qi Yuanli said indifferently, "Those barbarians from Drift Snow City are too arrogant and despotic. Last month, the people from my wind-sweeping pavilion went to Drift Snow City's territory to search for information, but they were beaten back." Xiao Lin's expression turned serious and he quickly nodded. At the same time, he thought to himself that even a small ranking list had to consider the other party's background and relationship with the wind-sweeping pavilion. As expected, the field of anemophilia was not easy. After getting Qi Yuanli's confirmation, Xiao Lin used a secret method to send a message to the headquarters of Eastern Qi's wind-sweeping pavilion and West Chu. When they replied, the three parties would change the ranking list together. The wind-sweeping pavilion's Dragon and Tiger Storm Supreme ranking was actually 3 huge stones erected in front of the headquarters and 2 branches of the wind-sweeping pavilion. The Supreme ranking was made from the azure glass stone, which was found in a meteorite. It was something that could only be found by chance. The Supreme ranking was made from the best material for forging weapons, the golden light stone. It was extremely bright and looked like gold, but it was more precious than gold. As for the Dragon and Tiger ranking, it was slightly worse. It was made from ordinary azure jade, but its quality was not bad. After the news was confirmed, the 3 parties erased the words on the giant stones at the same time and replaced them with new names. In front of the wind-sweeping pavilion, countless anemophilia affiliated with the wind-sweeping pavilion and some wandering martial artists were watching as the disciples of the wind-sweeping pavilion changed the ranking list. Compared to the Dragon and Tiger ranking that rarely changed, the changes on the Dragon and Tiger ranking were much bigger. There were even cases where the Dragon and Tiger ranking was changed twice in a day. This time, it did not attract too much attention. Most of the people were just there to watch the show. Some people even opened bets, betting on whose ranking would change this time, or if there would be a new person on the list. After the changes were completed, everyone could not help but be surprised when they saw the results of the new person on the list. It was his first time on the list and he was already in the top 20. This was quite impressive. Name, Chu Xiao. Nickname, Blood Demon. Rank, 18th affiliation, Blue Dragon Society's Heavenly Sin Branch Weapon. Artifact Thin Saber Martial Arts. Saber techniques are sharp and strange. His inner breath is deep. At the same time, he is skilled in grappling. He is suspected to have inherited part of the martial arts of the ancient demonic path expert, Heavenly Demon Lord. Battle record. Annihilated the Zhang family of the Mountain Sun Prefecture. Killed Zhang Bai Tao, an inner disciple of the Ba Mountain Sword Sect, and 4 other innate rankers in Luyang Town. Annihilated the Black Tiger Gang and 3 other factions in the Cold River Prefecture. Killed nearly 10 innate rankers. When the Heavenly Demon Lord's relic appeared in Luyang Mountain, he fought fiercely with Nye Donglu of the Morale Village and obtained the treasure. In the Bailing Prefecture, he incited internal strife in the Yu family. In one battle, thousands of Yu family members died, and all the direct descendants were slaughtered. Chapter 105. Chu Xiu's achievements on the Longhu leaderboard weren't that great. Some of the elites who had been on the leaderboard for years had more achievements than Chu Xiu. The reason why everyone was shocked was because of the people Chu Xiu killed when he was on the Longhu leaderboard. Looking at other people's achievements on the leaderboard, most of them competed with this person, won this person, competed with that person, won that person, and so on. Some of them killed people, but most of them killed evil cultivators. Actually, there weren't that many people killed. Looking at Chu Xiu's achievements, almost every one of them was achieved by killing people. Even without looking at the person himself, just by looking at his achievements, they knew that he was definitely a cruel and ruthless person. What made them even more afraid was Chu Xiu's identity. He was actually a warrior of the Blue Dragon Society. Actually, the assassins of the Blue Dragon Society didn't have to hide their names and keep a low profile. As one of the 4 spirits and the largest assassin organization in the world, the Blue Dragon Society didn't need to keep a low profile anymore. On the contrary, assassins also needed fame. Otherwise, who would hire a nameless assassin to kill someone? Therefore, over the years, many assassins of the Blue Dragon Society had been on the leaderboard. Now the great dragon head of the Blue Dragon Society, Crescent Green Dragon Butianan, was still on the leaderboard. However, there were very few warriors in the Blue Dragon Society who were on the leaderboard. The reason was very simple. The profession of an assassin was really about killing people. Those who could make a name for themselves and kill a lot were mostly veteran assassins. By the time they got on the leaderboard, they had already broken the rules of the leaderboard. There were also some who were lucky enough to get on the leaderboard, but as an assassin with a high mortality rate, the possibility of dying was very high. Therefore, no one from the Blue Dragon Society had been on the leaderboard for at least 10 years. This was the first time. Originally, when Chu Xiu destroyed the Yu clan, his name was only known in the east of Yan Kingdom. However, as Wind Sweeping Tower listed him on the Longhu leaderboard, Chu Xiu's name became very familiar in the Jianghu. Of course, only the people from the northern Yan country would remember him. Not long after Wind Sweeping Tower announced the news, Chu Xiu returned to the Blue Dragon Society branch in Mount Tai County. As soon as he entered the branch, the martial artists in the branch saw Chu Xiu return. They were stunned for a moment before they bowed to Chu Xiu and said, "Sir." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and nodded. The attitude of this group of people changed really fast. Before they were still indifferent, but now they were adults. In the square in the center of the branch, the Ghost Hand King and the other assassins from the Blue Dragon Society were all there. They looked at Chu Xiu with a strange expression. When Chu Xiu accepted this mission, no one thought that Chu Xiu could complete it. Everyone thought that Chu Xiu would fail in Bailing Mansion and return to the Blue Dragon Society to accept other low-level missions. However, who would have thought that Chu Xiu would really succeed and cause such a big commotion? The Ghost Hand King walked over and cupped his hands. "Brother Chu, congratulations. To be able to become a rank 5 assassin with the strength of an internal invulnerability stage. Let alone the Heavenly Sin branch, even in the entire Blue Dragon Society, there are only a few of them." Chu Xiu was surprised. "You guys know that I've completed the mission?" The Ghost Hand King smiled bitterly. The Blue Dragon Society has their own intelligence. Besides, the commotion you caused was too big. We didn't even need to investigate to know about it. You're very famous now. After destroying the Yu clan, you're ranked 18th on the Longhu leaderboard by Wind Sweeping Tower. The people of the martial world even gave you a nickname, Blood Demon. This is great. You don't have to think about your nickname in the Blue Dragon Society anymore. You can just use your nickname. At this point, the Ghost Hand King shook his head and said, "Compared to you, Brother Chu, we're really old. There's a rumor in the Blue Dragon Society that the fastest way to kill is not with martial arts. I've never understood what it means, but now I know." As the news of the Yu clan spread, the Ghost Hand King and the others were shocked. Chu Xiu's methods were very different from the way they killed people in the past. They only killed people, but Chu Xiu killed people's hearts. With this series of methods, the Yu clan was directly destroyed. If it were them, even if Yan Bugui and Tang Ye, who were the strongest among them, joined hands, they might not be able to complete such a difficult mission. Maybe they could kill Yu Henian or Yu Luchuan, but they couldn't kill as many people as Chu Xiu. When Chu Xiu heard this news, he frowned slightly. The intelligence of Wind Sweeping Tower was a little too good. He had just joined the Blue Dragon Society, and Wind Sweeping Tower had already dug out his identity? To be honest, Chu Xiu didn't care much about this list. It was like a tall tree attracting the wind. But now that his identity had been exposed, it didn't matter anymore. If the Blue Dragon Society could protect him, he would temporarily stay in the Blue Dragon Society. If the Blue Dragon Society couldn't protect him, Chu Xiu would find another way out. At this time the fire slave walked over and cupped his hands towards Chu Xiu. I have offended Brother Chu before, please forgive me. For others, they would be embarrassed to apologize after mocking the other party. But for the fire slave, it was not a problem at all. He was born in the western region. There were many small countries in that place, and they fought with each other all year round. There was only one truth, and that was, the strong were respected. The strength that Chu Xiu displayed was stronger than his. Not to mention that he bowed his head now. Even if Chu Xiu mocked him a few more times, he would still welcome him with a smile. Unlike other warriors, the fire slave had no such thing as dignity. Before he joined the Blue Dragon Society, he was just a slave of a tribe in the western region. Because that tribe had the word fire in their name, he was called the fire slave. To him, it was normal to apologize to the strong. There was nothing shameful about it. How could he eat something like dignity? Chu Xiu casually waved his hand and said, "It's just a small matter. There's no need to be like this." On the other side, the Wolf King with a wolf's head painted on his mask was a man in his 30s. He had a rough appearance and looked very forthright. He walked over and cupped his hands towards Chu Xiu, saying, "Wolf King Xiu Ming, please give me some pointers, Brother Chu." Well said. Chu Xiu also cupped his hands in return. The broken sword Yan Bugui, who was called the strongest in the Heavenly Sin Division by the Ghost Hand King, also nodded at Chu Xiu without saying anything. However, in the eyes of the others, this was already considered normal. This person's personality was so unsociable and cold. It was already not easy for him to be willing to talk to you. Tang Ye, who had not spoken since the beginning, was the youngest among them. He seemed to be only a few years older than Chu Xiu. His face was delicate and pretty. At first glance, he did not look like an assassin. Instead, he had the temperament of a noble family's young master. When everyone had finished speaking, he walked to Chu Xiu's side and suddenly asked, "Actually, I've always been curious about one thing. If the Yu clan's third brother did not agree to your plan to force him to abdicate, what would you do?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "The Yu clan's ninth branch, there are too many people with different intentions. I chose the Yu clan's third brother only because he has the biggest flaw in his heart. Moreover, I can be sure that even if I did not choose the Yu clan's third brother, as long as I could incite one person to attack Yu Henian, the Yu clan's third brother would definitely not stand idly by. The human heart is always the hardest thing to control. If they have no flaws in their hearts, my plan would also not succeed." Tang Ye was stunned for a moment, then suddenly laughed and said, "You're right. The human heart is indeed hard to control. It's even harder than martial arts." Chu Xiu glanced at Tang Ye. The Ghost Hand King was right. This Tang Ye's temper was a little strange and he seemed to be a little neurotic. However, their performance today also proved that within the Blue Dragon Society, only strength was the proof of status. Before Chu Xiu revealed his strength, people like Yan Bugui and Tang Ye did not even have the interest to talk to him. Now that he had completed a level 5 mission with the strength of an internal aura realm, he had completed a mission that they could not complete. Even the most eccentric and cold Yan Bugui took the initiative to greet Chu Xiu. At this moment, the Sky Crime Branch leader had just returned to the headquarters. Seeing that Chu Xiu had returned, he walked over and patted Chu Xiu's shoulder, praising him. "You did a good job in this mission. It can be considered that you have made our Blue Dragon Society proud. After you receive your mission reward, take 3 Azure Dragon Spirit Pills as an additional reward." After praising Chu Xiu, the Sky Crime Branch leader looked at Yen Bugue and the others with a gloomy gaze. What are you all still doing here? Are you all very free? There are so many missions piled up. Why aren't you all doing them? Are you all waiting for me to do them? Fire Slave shrugged his shoulders and did not dare to reply. He immediately ran off to choose his mission, and the others did the same. As for those killers without a code name, they waited for the Sky Crime Branch leader's figure to disappear before walking over to congratulate Chu Xiao. They greeted him as Lord and then obediently went off to choose their mission. Chu Xiao turned his head and asked Ghost Hand King, "Has Lord Branch Leader been in a bad mood recently?" Ghost Hand King said in a low voice, "Lord Branch Leader's mood is not only bad now. It can be said that he has never been in a good mood. I've told you about our Heavenly Sin Branch. 3 years ago, we were almost completely wiped out. In the end, the headquarters actually only sent Lord Branch Lord to rebuild the Heavenly Sin Branch. This is a tough job, and you know the inside story." Chu Xiao nodded. Of course he knew. If the Blue Dragon Society headquarters wanted people and resources, they would give them to the Sky Crime Branch leader and let him rebuild the Sky Crime Branch. That would be called receiving orders in the face of danger. But now, they only sent a lone commander. What was this called? It was called exile. Either the Sky Crime Branch leader had offended someone at the Blue Dragon Society headquarters, or he had been sent here because he had failed in a fight. Ghost Hand King chuckled and said, "It's good that you understand. Lord Branch Leader is also very sullen now. He is a great expert at the one with the world realm, but he is always carrying out level 5 or even level 4 missions. He feels ashamed." Chapter 106. There were some secrets about the Heavenly Sin Branch that weren't in the original story. Of course, Chu Xiao might have forgotten about it himself. However, since he knew that this branch lord wasn't in a good mood, Chu Xiao naturally wouldn't go and provoke him. Chu Xiao nodded. Then he turned to Ghost Hand King and asked, "Oh right. Those assassins just now all called me my lord. Is there any other position in the Azure Dragon Association other than the leader?" The Ghost Hand King shook his head and said, "Don't worry about it. That's just a title. These people are used to currying favor with rank 4 and rank 5 assassins like us. Before you became a rank 5 assassin, they didn't care, but now that you are, of course, they have to be polite to you. Otherwise, they might lose their lives. Some of our Blue Dragon Society's missions are group missions. For example, the mission you received to exterminate the Yu clan. Other than an abnormal person like you, who can complete it alone, no one else can do it. That's why we need to send a large number of people to exterminate the clan. We, the experts, are in charge of cleaning up the opponent's experts, and these low-level assassins will cooperate with us. When carrying out the mission, they naturally have to listen to our commands. So during the mission, if they offend us, we will send them to the most dangerous place. If they disobey, they will break the rules. When they return to the Blue Dragon Society, they will be severely punished." Chu Xiao raised his eyebrows. This kind of thing shouldn't be said openly. However, the Ghost Hand King didn't avoid it at all. Obviously, this kind of thing had become an unspoken rule. Actually, this kind of thing wasn't a good thing. Although class oppression existed everywhere, the Blue Dragon Society's actions were a bit too obvious. The unspoken rule had already become a problem. Of course, this was also related to the fact that the Blue Dragon Society was everywhere. No one in the Blue Dragon Society's headquarters would dare to do this. However, Chu Xiao didn't care. He was just an ordinary assassin in the Blue Dragon Society. At most, his rank was higher. He wasn't a branch lord, so this kind of thing wasn't something he should care about. After following the Ghost Hand King to get his own elixir and mission reward, Chu Xiao directly returned to the house and went into seclusion. In fact, this was also the norm for assassins in the Blue Dragon Society. They often walked the line between life and death. They either killed people or went into seclusion. Killing people was to earn cultivation resources. After earning cultivation resources, they could increase their strength and then kill even stronger people to earn even more cultivation resources. This was the daily life of most Blue Dragon Society assassins. Amidst the calmness, there was blood and killing. In the end, there were only 2 outcomes. The first was to become a great expert like the Heavenly Sin Branch leader, or to control a region, or to directly enter the Blue Dragon Society's headquarters to cultivate. The other one was naturally killed in the process of carrying out a mission. Advancing from the inner invulnerability stage to the outer invulnerability stage was a painstaking process. Even with the Azure Dragon's spiritual pill and the cultivation resources rewarded for completing the mission, he still had a long way to go before reaching the outer invulnerability stage. Half a month later, Chu Xiao had already refined all these things. It just so happened that he was ready to go out and do a few missions. While earning rewards, he could also hone his martial arts techniques. This time, Chu Xiao didn't choose those level 5 missions that were too difficult. Instead, he chose ordinary level 4 missions. Back then, Chu Xiao chose the Yu family as his target because he had a grudge against the Yu family. Another reason was that he wanted to establish his position in the Blue Dragon Society. Actually, a mission like the Yu family's wasn't worth it for Chu Xiao. This was because there were too many restrictions and it took too much time. For example, it would be very difficult for Chu Xiao to kill a physical invulnerability stage expert alone. Back then, Chu Xiao could kill Yu Henian because he had already been poisoned and seriously injured. If the other party was alone, it would make Chu Xiao feel that he couldn't kill him. At present, Chu Xiao didn't have the strength to fight against a physical invulnerability stage expert face-to-face without any tricks. Therefore, instead of wasting time and energy to carry out this kind of level 5 mission, it would be more practical to carry out a level 4 mission and kill some ordinary inner invulnerability stage martial artists. One reason was that Chu Xiao was confident, and the other was that he was fast. Moreover, as the ranking list of young masters spread in Jianghu, some people who came to the Blue Dragon Society to kill people even directly asked Chu Xiao to do it. Killers also needed fame. Before Chu Xiao became famous, only those who were familiar with the Blue Dragon Society in East Yen knew that Cruel Sword and Tang Ya were the 2 strongest killers in the Heavenly Sin branch. Therefore they were asked to do it by name. Now that the Longhu list was out, the person was changed to Chu Xiao. Of course, to ask a killer to carry out a mission by name, the prerequisite was that the price was enough and the killer agreed. The Blue Dragon Society was an assassin organization. With enough money, everything could be negotiated. Even if you wanted your enemy to be dismembered, the Blue Dragon Society could satisfy you. But if you made so many requests without money, you were purely looking for trouble. The temper of the killers in the Blue Dragon Society wasn't that good. 3 months later, in a small tavern on the official road of the Qingyang Mansion in Mount Tai County, a stout fat man sat there. There was a lot of wine and dishes in front of the table, but strangely, he didn't touch them. Instead, he kept wiping the cold sweat on his head, looking extremely nervous. The Jianghu people passing by looked at him strangely, but immediately stared back. His aura was extremely sharp. This seemingly strange fat man was actually an inner invulnerability stage martial artist. But this was even more strange. Why was an inner invulnerability stage martial artist sitting here and so nervous? At this time, someone seemed to have recognized his identity and secretly muttered, "Isn't this the Fuguei gang's leader, Fatty Yu? His gang is called the Fuguei gang, but it's very stingy. It's to the point that several martial arts factions around the Qingyang Manor are unwilling to deal with him." However, it was said that Fatty Yu had been doing very well recently. His rich and noble gang had been very generous this time. They had spent a lot of money to instigate a rival gang, the Iron Peak gang's vice gang leader, and completely annihilated them. Shouldn't he be counting money in the Fuguei gang now? What was he doing here? At this time, a Xiantian lord dressed in a short white robe and carrying 2 fans on his back hurriedly walked into the small wine shop. Seeing the martial artist, Fatty Yu quickly pulled him and asked, "How's the situation? Did you get the information?" The martial artist took out a fan and looked at the people around him. Seeing that Fatty Yu was so anxious that he didn't hide anything, he didn't bother to say more. He fanned himself and said, "Leader Yu, I've gotten the information. I advise you not to return to the Qingyang Mansion now. Just run for your life along the official road. Of course, if you have a physical invulnerability stage backing you, you can also choose to rely on them." Fatty Yu's expression changed and he quickly said, "What do you mean?" The martial artist said indifferently, "Of course it's for your own good." For the sake of his son entering the divine martial sect, the leader of the Iron Peak Hall had long prepared a large amount of precious treasures and resources as a greeting gift to the divine martial sect. The matter of destroying the Iron Peak Hall was done by you, Leader Yu. You didn't follow the rules of the Jianghu. The leader of the Iron Peak Hall had already admitted defeat and was even willing to cripple his own martial arts in exchange for his life. He even ordered the Iron Peak Hall to stop resisting, yet you still ruthlessly killed him. Don't blame his son for giving up the opportunity to enter the divine martial sect just to hire an assassin from the Blue Dragon Society to kill you. Moreover, the information has already been confirmed. Not only did he hire an assassin from the Blue Dragon Society, but he also paid a huge price to hire one of the gold medal assassins of the Heavenly Sin Branch, Blood Demon Wuxia, to kill you. That person might have only joined the Heavenly Sin Branch a few months ago, but he's the most famous one. In less than a month, he destroyed the Yu clan of the Biling Mountain. After that, he only carried out a few missions, but all of them were one-hit kills. Those who died were no weaker than you, Chief Yu. That's why I'm advising you to run now. I think the assassin should be in the Qingyang Manor by now. Hearing this, Fatty Yu regretted it very much. He didn't know that the leader of the Iron Peak Hall had actually left the most precious treasures and resources of the Iron Peak Hall to his son. When he killed the Iron Peak Hall, it was only for a moment of pleasure. After all, the Iron Peak Hall had always been causing trouble for him. Fatty Yu had wanted to kill him for a long time. Now that he knew that he was being targeted by an assassin from the Blue Dragon Society, and that it was the infamous blood demon Wuxia in the East Yen province, he felt a chill in his heart. Therefore, after hearing this, he immediately turned around to leave. However, he was stopped by the warrior behind him. Leader Yu, you've only paid the down payment. You haven't paid the rest yet. Our wind-sweeping tower's money isn't so easily owed. Otherwise, before the blood demon finds you, I'll throw your position out and show others, the warrior from Wind-Sweeping Tower sneered. Fatty Yu cursed in his heart. In a hurry, he threw out a fist-sized piece of purple gold and turned around to leave. However, he didn't follow the Wind-Sweeping Tower's advice and run for his life. Instead, he prepared to return to the Azure Sun Manor to collect some of the sect's resources and valuables. Those were his life savings, so Fatty Yu couldn't bear to throw them away. However, as soon as Fatty Yu left the tavern, he saw a warrior wearing a black warrior suit, a black iron hat with golden patterns, and a black iron mask leaning against a tree opposite the tavern. The warrior was holding a saber and leaning against the tree. The expressionless black iron mask had a bloodstain that extended from his forehead to his chin. It looked strange and sinister. This was Wuxia's code name in the Blue Dragon Society. It was also his symbol. Looking at Fatty Yu, Wuxia walked over with his saber and said indifferently, I won't stop you wherever you go. However, I'm here to borrow something from you today. Wuxia's eyes didn't show any emotion. He suddenly raised his head and there was only a cold, empty glint in his eyes. I'll borrow your head to hand in the mission. Chapter 107. Although there was no rule stating that an assassin had to assassinate someone in the dark, for Wuxia to appear in public and say that he wanted to borrow someone's head to complete his mission, this action was either extremely arrogant or extremely confident. The windbroker from Wind-Sweeping Tower was also shocked. This Wuxia was really fast. He had found this place in such a short amount of time. However, at this moment, whether it was him or the other martial artists in the tavern, they were all hiding far behind, not even daring to stick their heads out. If they were to join in a fight of this level, they probably wouldn't even know how they died. At this moment, when Fatty Yu saw Wuxia walking towards him with a saber in hand, cold sweat instantly flowed down his forehead. He had heard of Wuxia's fame. He was in existence ranked on the Longhu list, a ruthless person who had taken thousands of lives. Although they were both in the inner Qi realm, Fatty Yu didn't even have the confidence to block 3 moves from Wuxia. Therefore, without saying a word, Fatty Yu immediately turned around and fled. Although Fatty Yu's figure was extremely fat, his speed was very fast. In the blink of an eye, his fat figure had already run several feet away. Wuxia hadn't cultivated any speed-type movement skills. He directly condensed his earth energy and poured it into his legs. The explosive force was extremely shocking. After all, his inner force cultivation foundation was also extremely deep. The crimson saber was unsheathed. The stern and bloody chill could even be felt by Fatty Yu, who was several feet away. Just as the saber was about to reach him, Fatty Yu suddenly turned around and slapped at Wuxia with his left hand at an extremely fast speed. It was almost like an afterimage. The strangest thing was that his hand had strangely extended a lot. Before Wuxia's saber could slash at him, his palm would be able to cripple Wuxia's dantian. Fatty Yu had practiced this cloud-exploring hand technique for more than 20 years. In the end, it was practically second nature to him. However, at this moment, Chu Xiao had no intention of dodging at all. He directly met palm with palm and used the great purple sun hand. The dark purple palm collided with Fatty Yu's cloud exploring hand. With a loud sound of earth energy, Fatty Yu was directly sent flying. The purple sun demonic flames entered his body, causing him to immediately let out a miserable howl. However, before he could finish his howl, Fatty Yu felt like there was an endless whirlpool in Chu Xiao's eyes, pulling him into an endless abyss. In that instant, Fatty Yu lost control of his mind due to the intense pain. He was affected by Chu Xiao's soul-shifting art of extinguishing the heavens and extinguishing the earth. He was stunned for a moment and even forgot to scream. Although it was only for a short moment, it was enough for a martial artist like Chu Xiao who was proficient in swift sabers. A smear of crimson fell. Before Fatty Yu could regain his senses, Chu Xiao's saber had already completely chopped off his head. This time, his employer had said that he wanted Fatty Yu's head as a sacrifice to his father. Although it was a little troublesome, Chu Xiao had no reason to refuse since the employer had already increased his pay. With the head in hand, Chu Xiao brazenly disappeared on the official road. The people behind him subconsciously swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Although Fatty Yu's character wasn't very good, he was still considered a big shot in the Qingyang manor. After all, he was an expert at the inner energy realm. In the end, he was easily killed by Chu Xiao. The difficulty was no different from killing a chicken. This kind of terrifying strength had somewhat subverted their worldview. In particular, the martial artist from Wind Sweeping Pavilion couldn't help but think that the 18th place on the Longhu list that Wind Sweeping Pavilion had given Chu Xiao was a little low. Based on his strength, Chu Xiao should be ranked 8th. With this thought in mind, the wind agent from Wind Sweeping Pavilion suddenly chased after Chu Xiao. When Chu Xiao turned around with the head in hand, his gaze immediately caused the wind agent from Wind Sweeping Pavilion to feel a chill down his spine. "You were the one who made the deal with this fatty just now, right? Why are you following me now? Do you want to avenge this fatty?" The wind agent from Wind Sweeping Pavilion swallowed a mouthful of saliva and hurriedly said, "Official Chu, please don't misunderstand. I have nothing to do with this fatty. I just want to ask Official Chu something." "What's the matter?" Chu Xiao said coldly. The anemophilia hurriedly said, "I am Lu Yu, a third-grade wind agent from Wind Sweeping Pavilion's Daeshan County branch. Official Chu, you have recently been ranked 18th on the Longhu list by Wind Sweeping Pavilion. However, there is still some information that is unclear, such as your martial arts and background. I wonder if you can tell me?" Chu Xiao looked at Lu Yu as if he was looking at an idiot and coldly said, "For a martial artist, martial arts is a trump card. Would you tell others about your trump card? And even openly announce it on the list?" Lu Yu hurriedly said, "Official Chu, you have misunderstood. Wind Sweeping Pavilion only wants the name of your martial arts, and it is the martial arts name that you have already used. It will not affect your trump card at all. Also, you can just pick out the good stuff about your background." "What benefits do I get?" Lu Yu was taken aback. "It can increase your prestige on the Longhu list." Chu Xiao indifferently said, "A man is afraid of fame, and a pig is afraid of being fat. I have no interest in that. Moreover, I remember that Wind Sweeping Pavilion participated in the matter of trying to kill me. Aren't you afraid that I will kill you?" Lu Yu hurriedly shrunk his neck and said, "Official Chu, the person who provided you with the information was someone from the Linzhong County branch. It has nothing to do with me. Moreover, Wind Sweeping Pavilion is not trying to kill you. What we sell is information. If someone is willing to pay us, we cannot refuse to sell. Moreover, Wind Sweeping Pavilion has some cooperation with the Blue Dragon Society. If the Blue Dragon Society's assassins lose track of their target, they will come to Wind Sweeping Pavilion to buy information. Wind Sweeping Pavilion is absolutely neutral. This is something that everyone in the pugilistic world knows. As long as you buy information from Wind Sweeping Pavilion, we will definitely not sell it to anyone else. We will also not leak your information." Chu Xiao raised an eyebrow. He was actually quite curious about Wind Sweeping Pavilion. For example, when he was being chased, he didn't even see anyone from Wind Sweeping Pavilion. However, they were able to roughly pinpoint his location. It was quite miraculous. However, this was definitely Wind Sweeping Pavilion's specialty. Even if he asked, Wind Sweeping Pavilion would definitely not tell him. Therefore, Chu Xiao indifferently said, I have no interest in the Longhu list. You can leave. When Lu Yu saw that Chu Xiu didn't kill him, he hurriedly took out a piece of paper and handed it to Chu Xiu. He said, Official Chu, this is where I live and a number of ways to contact me. Official Chu, if you want to buy information, you can look for me. Wind Sweeping Pavilion's information is accurate and trustworthy. Official Chu, you can ask around. I can guarantee it. Chu Xiu accepted the piece of paper. Although he didn't need to buy information from Wind Sweeping Pavilion for now, he might really need it in the future. When Lu Yu saw Chu Xiu accept the piece of paper, the corner of his mouth also revealed a trace of a smile. Other people wouldn't dare to deal with Chu Xiu, who had killed countless people, but Lu Yu dared. In his eyes, there was no good or evil. There were only customers who wanted to buy information from him. With Chu Xiu's strength, if he wanted to buy information from Lu Yu, it would definitely be a big deal. He would definitely be more generous than that stingy fatty Yu. After Chu Xiu left, he directly took the head back to the Blue Dragon Society to hand in the mission. During this period of time, Chu Xiu had always been like this. The best way for him to practice his martial skills was through killing. Only then would he become more natural and proficient, especially the great art of extinguishing heaven and destroying earth, destroying soul shifting. This kind of spiritual power cultivation technique could only become stronger through continuous training with the opponent's spiritual power. In the Bailing Mansion, Chu Xiu could only use the great art of extinguishing heaven and destroying earth, destroying soul shifting to slightly affect the Yu clan's third brother's mind. Now, however, he could forcibly control Fatty Yu and make him lose his mind for a moment. Although it was only for a short moment, for a martial artist, such a moment was enough to take the other party's life. After handing in the mission, Chu Xiu took the reward and continued to cultivate. However, at this moment, someone suddenly knocked on his door. When he opened it, he saw that it was Fire Slave and Wolf King Xiao Ming. This made Chu Xiu feel a little strange. The relationship between the hitmen of the Azure Dragon Society wasn't that good. But since the guilty branch had fewer members and more missions, it wasn't like the other branches where there was a problem of snatching missions. Therefore, the relationship between everyone wasn't that bad. With Chu Xiu's strength, the other low-level assassins would also respectfully call him Lord when they saw him. The Ghost Hand King and the others would also chat with him. However, that was the most they could do. When Chu Xiu was cultivating in seclusion, no one really came to disturb him. What can I do for the two of you? Fire Slave smiled and said, It's like this. The Wolf King and I are going to take a level 4 mission. However, although it is level 4, it is close to level 5. The mission targets are 8 martial artists in the inner strong realm. However, the mission reward is also close to level 5, so it is quite worthwhile. The two of us are afraid that we can't handle it, so we want to ask Brother Chu to help us. The 3 of us will work together for this mission. After the mission, you will get 40% of the reward, and we will each get 30%. What do you think, Brother Chu? Chu Xiu glanced at the mission reward that the employer took out. 40% was about twice as much as the mission to kill Fatty Yu. Moreover, it was normal to work together to carry out a mission in the Blue Dragon Society. Moreover, the two of them were also tactful. They knew that their strength was not as good as Chu Xiu, so they took the initiative to let Chu Xiu take the big head. Therefore, Chu Xiu nodded and said, No problem, I agree. Fire Slave said, That's good. The 3 of us will go and report to the branch leader. As long as the branch leader agrees, we will take action. Chu Xiu asked doubtfully, Do we need the branch leader's permission for this kind of thing? Fire Slave said, If you carry out the mission alone, then the branch leader will naturally not care what you should do. However, for a group mission, unless the branch leader personally orders it, if we decide to do it ourselves, it will be a big taboo. There have been people who did this in the past, and the outcome was very miserable. Chapter 108. Speaking of the Heavenly Sin branch leader, the Fire Slave closed the door and whispered to Chu Xiu, You were personally recruited into the Azure Dragon Gang by the branch leader. In fact, the 2 of us were recruited as well. The Ghost Hand King should have already told you that the Azure Dragon Gang's rules are very simple. As long as you don't lose face, it's fine. However, you must abide by the Heavenly Sin branch's rules, and that is to obey the branch leader's orders. Of course, with the branch lord's strength, we don't dare to disobey his orders. In any case, if you want to have a good time in the Heavenly Sin branch, you just need to remember one thing. You are the branch lord's knife. Wherever he tells you to cut, you just have to cut. Chu Xiao secretly frowned. His memory of the Heavenly Sin Branch Lord was only the original plot where he schemed against a few large Northern Yen factions. It wasn't very clear, and he only had a general idea. In any case, this branch lord wasn't someone who would settle down. Of course, this might also be related to the current situation of the Heavenly Sin Branch. Their strength was already so weak, so it wasn't strange for them to be a little unconventional. However, after hearing Fire Slave's words, this Heavenly Sin Branch Lord's desire for control was very strong. Of course, this was also related to the system of the Blue Dragon Society. Almost all the branch lords were like local tyrants, and they held too much power in their hands. Chu Xiao cupped his hands at Fire Slave and said, "Thank you for telling me." Fire Slave laughed and said, "It's nothing. The Heavenly Sin Branch doesn't have many people, so there isn't much competition. Everyone is too lazy to fight. In the past, most of the group missions were carried out by me and the Wolf King. Ghost Hand King, that old guy, is now helping the branch lord to manage the branch. Naturally, the branch lord will give him rewards. He is too lazy to handle missions with little benefits. Cruel Sword and Tangya, one is cold and unsociable. When we went to find him, he was too lazy to agree. The other one has a strange temper. He is picky about normal missions, let alone missions like ours. Now that Brother Chu is here, we have one more helper. If there was no conflict of interest, there would naturally be less competition. As long as one wasn't an idiot, even if they didn't like each other, in this Sin Branch, no one would be bothered to fight. When Chu Xiao and the others went to look for the Heavenly Sin Division Leader, the Heavenly Sin Division Leader looked at the mission and didn't find any problems. He nodded and said, "All right, you can go. However, it's best if you go alone. You can also train your own abilities." Look at Chu Xiao. Didn't he also complete a level 5 mission alone? You even made it into the Longhu leaderboard and brought glory to the Heavenly Sin Branch. You always think of relying on numbers to accomplish things. When will you be able to stand on your own? The Fire Slave and Wolf King nodded their heads in agreement when they heard the Heavenly Sin Branch Master's words. However, Chu Xiao secretly frowned his brows as he felt that something was amiss. Although the Heavenly Sin Branch Master's words were praising him, he was actually praising him. It was obvious that he was trying to sow discord between him and the Fire Slave, Wolf King, and the others. He was very familiar with this kind of scheming of a superior. He had seen it in both his previous and current lives. It was nothing more than wanting his subordinates to be too united. It wasn't a good thing for a superior to have subordinates of one mind. However, Chu Xiao still felt that this Heavenly Sin Branch Master was a little narrow-minded. It wasn't a problem to have this kind of mentality, but it also depended on the situation and time. Currently, the Heavenly Sin Branch was weak and needed to develop with all its strength. However, the Heavenly Sin Branch Master was still trying to sow discord. It was a little too ungenerous. It was unknown whether the Fire Slave and Wolf King hid their intentions well or they really didn't have any schemes. In any case, when the Heavenly Sin Branch Master spoke, they didn't show any malice towards Chu Xiao. As for the Heavenly Sin Branch Master's behavior, the Fire Slave, Wolf King, and Chu Xiao tacitly didn't mention it. Instead, they started discussing the mission. Chu Xiao asked, "Who is the target of this mission?" The Fire Slave said, "It's the Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery. The one who asked them to take action is a branch of the Zhang family in Daishan Commandery. Speaking of which, this mission of the Zhang family is very interesting. This is also the first time I've received a mission to kill one of our own. In the past, the Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery was a really big family. How big was it? More than 300 years ago, the Zhang family's power could even contend for being one of the 9 big families in the pugilistic world. Unfortunately, I don't know what happened to the Zhang family. In just a few decades they actually began to rapidly decline. Now, the entire Zhang family doesn't even have a single physical invulnerability realm martial artist. The Zhang family's branch in Daishan Commandery was only a collateral branch of the Zhang family. They were responsible for managing some of the Zhang family's businesses in Daishan Commandery. However, when the Zhang family's direct line of descent began to decline, the collateral branch completely rose. Its power was even greater than the Zhang family's direct line of descent. These two families haven't communicated with each other for almost 100 years. Recently, The Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery seemed to be unable to survive in the local area. They actually contacted the Zhang family of Daishan Commandery, hoping to merge the two families and restore the Zhang family's former glory. What's even more unbelievable is that someone from the Zhang family of Daishan Commandery actually agreed. Brother Chu, don't you think this is ridiculous? Chu Xiao was slightly speechless. This was the first time he had heard of such a strange thing. He didn't know what the Zhang family of Daishan Commandery was thinking. Even an idiot would know that although the two families shared the same surname and ancestor, the people were different. Currently, the Zhang family of Daishan Commandery was powerful. However, the Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery was the direct line of descent. After the two families merged, who would they listen to? Huan Yu chuckled and said, even the elders of the Zhang family of Daishan Commandery agreed to merge the two families. I'm afraid they are senile. However, the young people of the Zhang family of Daishan Commandery have their own ideas. They directly pooled a large amount of resources and property to let us rob and kill the people of the Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery. By the way, the Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery has some enmity with you, Brother Chu. Chu Xiao thought for a while and said, enmity? Why can't I remember when I have offended such a family? Or, among the people I killed, who is related to the Zhang family? Chu Xiao had killed quite a number of people in Linzhong Commandery. The majority of martial artists had complicated relationships in the pugilistic world. It was possible that the person you killed was someone's good friend or relative. This was a definite possibility. Huan Yu shook his head and said, you haven't offended them. However, among the martial arts forces that participated in the pursuit of you, the Zhang family also sent people. There was even an internal strength realm martial artist, but he didn't meet you face to face. Chu Xiao nodded in understanding. So this was the case. It didn't matter. When the righteous manor issued an order for arrest, almost all the martial arts forces in Linzhong Commandery, big and small, took action. Among them, some went for the reputation of the righteous manor, and some went for the secret box of the absolute heaven demon venerable on Chu Xiao. If Chu Xiao really wanted to take revenge, he would probably have to slaughter the entire Linzhong Commandery. Huan Yu looked at Chu Xiao and said, Brother Chu, Wolf King and I are crude people. We don't have much experience in dealing with such a large number of people. This time, I'll leave the plan to you. Chu Xiao said indifferently, the other party only has 8 internal strength realm martial artists. With the 3 of us taking action, is there a need for a plan? Huan Yu and Wolf King were a little stunned. However, after thinking about it carefully, they realized that it was true. Although the Heavenly Sin branch was short of people, not everyone could join the Blue Dragon Society. Otherwise, it wouldn't matter if people died. However, if they kept failing the mission, it would be a disgrace to the Blue Dragon Society. Therefore, to be able to become an assassin of the Blue Dragon Society, one had to at least be the best among the martial artists of the same rank. 3 against 8 sounded a little boastful, but for the 3 of them, it really wasn't a difficult task. Especially Chu Xiao, he was an existence that stepped into the top 20 of the Longhu leaderboard. Basically, there were few martial artists of the same rank who could rival him. After making the preparations, the 3 went to meet the employer. The person who came to ask the Blue Dragon Society for help was actually a young man in his 20s. Seeing the 3 people in front of him, the young man handed over the target's information and cupped his hands. I'm Zhang Tianqi. May I know your names? Seeing that the Blue Dragon Society only sent 3 internal strength realm martial artists, Zhang Tianqi was a little dissatisfied. The commission he offered was not small, but the other party only sent 3 people. Wasn't this a little too perfunctory? The information about the Blue Dragon Society was a little vague to a young man like Zhang Tianqi. He only knew that within the Blue Dragon Society, only Blood Demon, Tang Ya, and Cruel Sword were famous. However, he didn't know how to identify them. If one of the 3 people in front of him was one of them, then it would be fine. However, the tone of distrust in his words was a little obvious. The Wolf King directly snorted and said, Why are you asking so much? It's fine as long as they can help you kill people. Why, do you want to specially assign an assassin to kill people? All right, double the commission. You can choose any assassin from the Blue Dragon Society. Zhang Tianqi was immediately choked by the Wolf King's words. These things were taken out by the core generation and the younger generation of the family, and they did it behind the old fools in the family. If they were to take out double the commission, the The Zhang family wouldn't be able to afford it even if they sold themselves. After laughing awkwardly, Zhang Tianqi said, "There is one more thing that I need to trouble the three of you with. The target of this mission is only the 8 internal invulnerability experts of the Zhang family from Linzhong Commandery. As for the other martial artists of the Zhang family, please hold back. As long as we get rid of the 8 internal invulnerability experts, the Zhang family of Daishan Commandery is still confident of swallowing the rest." Upon hearing this, the Wolf King and the Fire Slave coldly snorted. Chu Xiao also sneered and said, "The people of the Blue Dragon Society only know how to kill people and won't release people. As for how many people we kill, it naturally depends on our mood. Do you really think that you can become the Jade Emperor just by spending money? Our Blue Dragon Society only kills people and doesn't serve people. Why would we have so many requests?" After saying that, Chu Xiao directly turned around and left. The Wolf King and the Fire Slave also didn't continue to pay attention to this idiot. Their Blue Dragon Society wasn't like other small assassin organizations, where they could still raise conditions and bargain with you. One sentence, use it if you want. If you dare to speak rudely, I'll kill you too. Zhang Tianqi's face alternated between red and white. Facing the Blue Dragon Society, he still hadn't figured out his own identity and status. In front of the Blue Dragon Society, even if the Zhang family was the employer, so what? They still didn't have the right to bargain. Previously, when Zhang Tianqi went to the wind-sweeping brothel to buy information, although the wind-sweeping brothel was more powerful than the Zhang family, the middlemen were all polite. However, that was only because of the identity of the anemophilia. No matter how big or small the identity of a customer was, as long as they took the money, they had to treat the customer like the Jade Emperor. However, the nature of the Blue Dragon Society was different from the wind-sweeping brothel. Do you expect a bunch of assassins to speak nicely to you? Zhang Tianqi was probably thinking too much. Zhang Tianqi snorted coldly and didn't dare to say anything else. He quickly returned to the Zhang family to report. Chapter 109. 3 days later at midnight, on the official road from Linzhong Commandery to Daishan Commandery, a team of dozens of people was slowly moving forward. They were the people of the Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery. To be honest, the Zhang family had been living a miserable life in Linzhong Commandery in recent years. Of course, they could not blame others for this. They could only blame themselves for going too far in the past. In the past, when the Zhang family was strong, they were famous in the whole East Yan, not to mention the entire Linzhong Commandery. They were one step away from becoming one of the 9 great families in Jianghu. At that time, the Zhang family was very overbearing and offended many people. As a result, when the Zhang family weakened, it was naturally the turn of other forces to hit them when they were down. Over the years, the Zhang family had been suppressed by other forces in Linzhong Commandery. Not much of their past heritage was left. It was simply getting more and more dilapidated year by year. Therefore, the Zhang family had been thinking of a way out for a long time. Originally, they did not take the collateral branches in Daishan Commandery seriously. However, later they gradually found that they were doing better than the direct descendants. This made the Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery have some other ideas. They wanted to communicate with the other side. Previously, they still had the idea of contacting the other side. They did not expect things to go so smoothly. The Zhang family in Daishan Commandery directly agreed to let them move to Daishan Commandery. This time, the Zhang family mainly sent some masters and direct descendants with some of the more valuable treasures of the Zhang family. The rest of the ordinary materials and clansmen would only come with them after they arrived in Daishan Commandery and settled everything. The head of the Zhang family, Zhang Yuanfeng, looked around but didn't find any inn. There seemed to be a dilapidated temple on a small hill not far away. There was still a faint light of fire in the temple. There should be people resting in the temple. Zhang Yuanfeng said to the others, "It's getting late. Let's not leave for now. Let's rest in the dilapidated temple tonight." As he said this, he led the other warriors of the Zhang family to the broken temple on the hill. At this time, in the broken temple, Chu Xiao, Fire Slave, and Wolf King were setting up a bonfire and roasting 3 chickens. Fire Slave was in charge of roasting. While roasting, he sprinkled all kinds of seasonings on the roasted chicken. After a while, a rich aroma wafted out. The Wolf King praised from the side, "Your culinary skills are really good. If your martial arts are crippled one day, You won't starve to death even if you become a cook. Fire Slave glanced at him and said, "If you still dare to speak like this after being crippled, I guarantee that you will be beaten to death the next day." The Fire Slave looked at Chu Xiao and said proudly, "Brother Chu, it tastes good, right? When I was a slave in the western region, I learned this from the sacred fire race. At that time, I was a slave in charge of roasting meat for them. It was a good job. Other slaves didn't even have enough to eat, but I could eat until my mouth was full. It's also because of this that I was able to secretly learn the sacred flame race's cultivation technique and quickly cultivate to blood condensation before escaping. Otherwise, how can they cultivate if they don't even have enough to eat?" Fire Slave had never cared about his background. Practically everyone in the Heavenly Sin branch knew about it. Of course, that was only because he didn't care. If someone dared to joke about his background, they would know just how terrifying his methods were. To the side, the Wolf King suddenly said, "The Zhang family should have arrived, right? What if they haven't come to rest in this broken temple?" Chu Xiao indifferently said, "If they haven't arrived, then they haven't arrived. Once we're full, we'll directly chase after them and kill them." The Wolf King shrugged. Having an expert overseeing things was really different. The mission was easily carried out. At this time, Chu Xiao suddenly said, "They're here. The Zhang family's people have come up the mountain." Because he cultivated the heaven-extinguishing earth soul-shifting art, his perception was much higher than the Wolf King and Fire Slave's. Fire Slave laughed mischievously. "There's no rush. Let's eat first." After a while, the Zhang family's people all came up the mountain. When they opened the door to the temple, they saw 3 people roasting food. Because they were preparing to eat, the bamboo hats and masks were a bit in the way, so the 3 of them had put them behind their backs. They had also withdrawn their auras. At a glance, Chu Xiao's group of 3 only had the strength of body tempering or blood condensation. One of the Zhang family's youths looked around the temple and felt that it was a bit small. He couldn't help looking at Chu Xiao and taking out a silver ingot. He coldly snorted, "You 3, get out of the way." Zhang Yuanfeng frowned. "First come, first served. They came here first, so why are we chasing them away? No matter how small this place is, it's enough for you to sleep. Don't cause trouble." The youth could only take back the silver ingot and unhappily said, "Yes, father." The Zhang family's people all stayed on the other side of the temple. Zhang Yuanfeng glanced at Chu Xiao's group of 3. He felt that there was something wrong with them. Ordinary low-level cultivators would definitely be scared to the point that they would take the initiative to get out of the way when they saw so many experts. However, these 3 seemed to completely ignore them. Their attention was completely focused on the roast chicken, as if they weren't as attractive as the roast chicken. However, Zhang Yuanfeng didn't think too much about it. The older cultivators of Jianghu were all old foxes. On the other hand, the younger ones were more spirited and arrogant, thinking that they wouldn't fear authority. Only after falling a few times did they learn what it meant to be awed. Chu Xiao's group of 3 looked very young. Zhang Yuanfeng thought that the 3 of them were inexperienced cultivators, so he didn't pay much attention to them. After a few days of traveling, he was also a little tired. He instructed the others to eat their rations and go to bed. At this time, the chicken on Chu Xiao's side was also roasted. The tempting aroma was getting stronger and stronger. The Zhang family's young master glanced at the dry rations in his hand and immediately lost interest. He took out silver ingots and threw them at the feet of Chu Xiao's group. He said loudly, "The silver ingots are yours. Bring the roast chicken over." However, Chu Xiao's group of 3 acted as if they didn't see the silver ingots. They directly took the roast chicken and bit into it. Seeing this scene, the Zhang family's young master was immediately enraged. He wanted to flare up, but he was stopped by Zhang Yuanfeng. "Have you forgotten what I told you at home? Don't cause trouble. Otherwise, you will be punished according to the family rules." Seeing his father speak, the Zhang family's young master could only glare fiercely at Chu Xiao's group of 3 and bite into the tasteless rations in his hand. Seeing his son's behavior, Zhang Yuanfeng also sighed helplessly. In fact, when Zhang Yuanfeng was young, he was even more overbearing and arrogant than his son. However, as he grew older, the Zhang family also declined year by year. He also understood that the Zhang family couldn't continue like this. In the past, the Zhang family had been too arrogant and overbearing. They had made too many enemies, which led to the decline of the Zhang family. Once they were in decline, countless people would kick them when they were down. Therefore, when they left home this time, he had already told the Zhang family's disciples that they had to keep a low profile and not cause trouble. The Zhang family's reputation in Linzhong County was already bad. If they were to go to Mount Tai County, there would be no place for them to stay at all. Unfortunately, habits couldn't be changed in a short period of time. Looking at his son's current behavior was proof. After a quarter of an hour, Chu Xiao and the others also finished their roast chicken. The three of them wiped their hands, took out the bamboo hats and masks behind them, and slowly put them on. This scene fell into the eyes of the Zhang family's people, causing their movements to gradually stiffen. At first, they didn't react because the black warrior suit wasn't considered special. There were many martial artists in the pugilistic world who wore it. However, when the black warrior suit was matched with the black iron bamboo hat and black iron mask with golden patterns, 3 words involuntarily appeared in their minds. Blue Dragon Society. This group of people actually sat together with 3 Blue Dragon Society assassins for such a long time. At this moment, Zhang Yuanfeng was even more shocked than the others. Although the Zhang family had declined, they still had a foundation. Therefore, it could be said that they were quite familiar with the rules of the Blue Dragon Society. Ordinary assassins of the Blue Dragon Society would only wear a black iron mask, and those with patterns on the mask were the assassins with code names. The true elites of the Blue Dragon Society. Zhang Yuanfeng suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. Chu Xiao adjusted the bamboo hat on his head, picked up the knife and said faintly, "After eating and drinking, it's time to kill." With that said, he turned his gaze to Zhang Yuanfeng and the others. Everyone should also be full, right? It's not bad to go down and be a full ghost. The moment Chu Xiao's voice fell, Zhang Yuanfeng had already jumped up. The long sword in his hand carried a hot aura, as strong as fire, and directly slashed at Chu Xiao. "Do it!" Zhang Yuanfeng shouted, but unfortunately, the Zhang family's inner strong realm martial artists behind him seemed to be a little slow. They didn't react in time, which led to Zhang Yuanfeng rushing at Chu Xiao alone. The crimson knife light flashed in front of Zhang Yuanfeng's eyes. Azure Dragon in the sleeve. Diving abyss to sea. This extremely fast saber strike arrived first even though it was launched later. A loud bang rang out as the saber and sword collided. A sinister and bloody baleful aura suddenly erupted. It was an extremely dense baleful aura. As Chu Xiao slaughtered more people, the baleful aura condensed from his piercing the sun and moon technique grew stronger. Even when he stepped into the inner strong realm, he could even condense the blood aura on the surface of the weapon, which was far more powerful than ordinary Gang Qi. An extremely chilling and bloody aura erupted. Zhang Yuanfeng's body was unable to withstand the powerful force and was forced to retreat. His sword-wielding hand trembled, and blood flowed uncontrollably from the webbing between his thumb and index finger. However, before he could defend himself, Chu Xiao's figure followed him like a shadow, closely following him. The drizzle was crimson red, and the extremely magnificent sword intent descended like a continuous drizzle. Zhang Yuanfeng, who was within it, felt a ferocious killing intent and death intent assaulting him. Chapter 110. Zhang Yuanfeng's strength was actually relatively strong among the warriors in the inner aura realm. After all, his Zhang family was also a big family with a powerful inheritance of skills. Although it had declined, it was still stronger than the Yu family's inner aura realm warrior, Fatty Yu. However, with Chu Xiao's powerful explosive power, as long as Chu Xiao took the initiative, Yu would naturally be weaker. Only when Zhang Yuanfeng was repelled did the other Zhang family's inner aura realm warriors react and rush towards the two, wanting to help. In fact, until now, the Zhang family's people were still in a state of confusion and did not understand the situation. Just now, they were still gnawing on roasted chicken and looked like low-level people in the pugilistic world. Now that they had put on a bamboo hat and a mask, they had turned into assassins from the Blue Dragon Society and were rushing towards them with ferocious murderous intent. Especially the young master of the Zhang family. When he thought about how he wanted to teach these 3 people a lesson, he felt a chill in his heart. With the strength of these 3 people, if he got close to them and they attacked him, even his father would not be able to save him at such a close distance. Moreover, what puzzled everyone even more was who hired the Blue Dragon Society assassins to kill them. Although the Zhang family was now in decline, A starving camel was still bigger than a horse. It was not a small amount of money to hire the Blue Dragon Society assassins to kill them. It could even make an aristocratic family that was almost as big as the Zhang family go bankrupt. Although the Zhang family had offended many people in Linzhong Commandery, they did not have this kind of great enmity with the Zhang family, right? However, they did not have time to think about these things now. Zhang Yuanfeng was still struggling in the power of Chu Xiu's sword. If this dragged on, the family head would be killed by the assassin. However, before they could make a move, Fire Slave and Wolf King had already rushed over. To be able to become level 4 assassins of the Blue Dragon Society, these two were not weak. Fire Slave was born in the western region. As a slave, he secretly learned some martial arts of the sacred fire race. After coming to the Central Plains, he learned some martial arts of the Central Plains. Although it seemed a bit nondescript, its power could be said to be strange. Fire Slave's figure was like a snake, wandering among the warriors. He was abnormally agile and found the right opportunity to strike with his palm. Suddenly, a powerful fire force seeped into the opponent's body. Although the fire energy in the Fire Slave's palm wasn't as tyrannical as Chu Xiu's great violet yang hand of extinguishing the heavens and extinguishing the earth, it was even more strange. After the fire force seeped into the opponent's body, it could incessantly burn the opponent's qi, blood, and internal energy. When the Fire Slave struck the opponent with its palm again, it could even draw out the fire force along with the opponent's internal energy and qi to replenish itself. It could be said to be extremely bizarre. It could even say that if one fight, as if the opponent's battle, as if the opponent did not have powerful explosive. In Yang could rank. If Fire Slave's battle technique was strange, then Wolf King's battle technique was much more simple and violent. He cultivated a body refining technique. His body was incomparably strong. At the same time, he also cultivated an extremely violent killing technique. When he fought, he was fierce and domineering. His momentum was extraordinary. His weapon was very strange. It turned out to be a pair of steel claws with flexible joints in the middle. The claws could be equipped with extremely sharp tips. After attaching Gang Qi to the steel claws, weapons below the level of precious weapons could not withstand more than a few strikes from him and were all crushed. If a warrior of the same level was caught by him, they would almost end up with their stomachs cut open. It was extremely bloody. When these two people attacked, they were like tigers entering a flock of sheep. In an instant, they blocked the attacks of 7 inner strong realm warriors. Zhang Yuanfeng struggled bitterly under Chu Xiu's saber force. Seeing that the 7 people behind him were blocked by the 2 Blue Dragon Society assassins, he was shocked and couldn't help but want to retreat. However, under Chu Xiu's continuous saber force that was like a drizzle, not to mention retreating, it was extremely strenuous for him to even block. At the critical moment, the sword in Zhang Yuanfeng's hand suddenly changed. A layer of red flames bloomed on the long sword. His qi and blood surged. He spat out a mouthful of blood essence and sprinkled it on his long sword. It merged with the hot Gang Qi and instantly bloomed a blood-red hot Gang Qi. A few feet long Gang Qi swept over. Zhang Yuanfeng actually burst out a few feet long Gang Qi at the inner strong realm. In the past, the Zhang family was a big family in East Yen. They still had some foundation. At the very least, they were stronger than others in terms of martial arts. The Zhang family's secret 9 revolving scorching sun sword art could only be considered to be a real small success after reaching the physical invulnerability realm. Only then could they exert the greatest power. Now, Zhang Yuanfeng could only use the power of qi and blood to drive the Gang Qi to burst out this Gang Qi. Zhang Yuanfeng thought that Chu Xiu would definitely retreat in the face of this Gang Qi sword. However, Chu Xiu did not retreat. His eyes showed a hint of ridicule. A black gas had already seeped into his eyes and wrapped around his red sleeve blade, causing the crimson blade to be stained with a terrifying black gas. This slash was like the gates of hell opening wide. An endless aura of despair hovered above the blade. Wherever it passed, the bright and scorching stellar energy was extinguished, and the precious sword in Zhang Yuanfeng's hand shattered with a loud bang. The way of Avicii slashed out 3 times. The terrifying slash that came from the infernal hell beheaded Zhang Yuanfeng. However, the strange thing was that no matter if it was Zhang Yuanfeng's body or his head, not a single drop of blood spilled. It was as if all the blood had been sucked clean by Chu Xiu's strange slash. After putting the sword back into the sheath, Chu Xiu's hand that was holding the sword was still trembling slightly. The power of the glazed golden thread goo in his body was constantly suppressing the backlash of the 3 blades of Avicii, causing the black gas in Chu Xiu's eyes to gradually dissipate. Not only were the members of the Zhang clan stunned, but even the Fire Slave and the Wolf King felt a chill run down their spines. The Fire Slave and the Wolf King were both experienced and knowledgeable, especially after joining the Blue Dragon Society. They had killed a lot of people and seen a lot of things. They had seen all kinds of strange martial arts, but it was rare to see such an evil and terrifying slash like Chu Xiu's. No, it should be said that they had never seen such a terrifying slash. The people of Jianghu gave Chu Xiu the nickname of Blood Demon. Now it seemed that Chu Xiu's slash was worthy of the word demon. What are you waiting for? The earlier we kill, the earlier we can call it a day. Chu Xiu said and directly attacked the Zhang family's warriors. The Fire Slave and the Wolf King also reacted at this time and quickly took action. It was 3 against 7, but in fact, Chu Xiu's side directly crushed their opponents. In Chu Xiu's view, the strength of the Zhang family's warriors was even inferior to the Yu family's internal aura realm warriors. Except for Zhang Yuanfeng, there was no one who could fight. Powerful skills were important, but skills were not the whole of combat power. These Zhang family's warriors had too little combat experience. The Zhang family had eaten too much over the years, causing the Zhang family's warriors to have very little combat experience, and their combat power was very weak. In less than a quarter of an hour, 4 of the Zhang family's 7 internal aura realm warriors were killed by Chu Xiu, leaving only 3 who were still struggling. But at this moment, suddenly there was a shout from outside. "Have mercy!" The person who ran in was Zhang Tianqi, and he also brought 3 older internal aura realm warriors. Hearing this, Chu Xiu and the other 2 stopped subconsciously and looked at Zhang Tianqi, not knowing what he was doing. Among the 3 people behind Zhang Tianqi, the oldest internal aura realm warrior stood up and said to Chu Xiu and the others, "You 3, I'm Zhang Weiqi, the great elder of the Zhang family in Daishan Commandery. I'm not afraid to say it out loud, but this matter is actually a misunderstanding. We promised the Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery to integrate into our Zhang family of Daishan Commandery. In fact, it was a trap. Before this, we had already contacted the 3 internal aura realm warriors of the Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery and successfully bribed them. As long as the Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery migrated to Daishan Commandery, we could cooperate from inside and outside and completely swallow the Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery. But we were afraid that if too many people knew about this matter, they would give themselves away, so we didn't tell the juniors. We waited until the Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery had completely settled down, and when they were not vigilant, we made our move. But who would have thought that these juniors would go behind our backs and find you to kill the Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery, ruining our plan?" Speaking up to this point, Zhang Weiqi even glared at Zhang Tianqi, which made Zhang Tianqi immediately lower his head in shame. In fact, this matter couldn't be entirely blamed on them. They could only blame the elders of the Zhang family for acting too realistically, causing the other Zhang family members to really think that they were senile and muddle-headed, so they took the initiative to hire the Blue Dragon Society to kill them. At this time, there were still 3 survivors of the Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery. One of them walked directly to the Zhang family of Daishan Commandery, causing the other 2 to glare angrily at him and at the same time feel sad. There was actually a traitor on their side. This way, even if there weren't assassins from the Blue Dragon Society, they would still be dead once they reached Daishan Commandery. As for the Zhang family of Daishan Commandery, they were even more helpless. Originally, they had a good plan, and they could swallow the Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery without losing a single person. But now, the 2 internal aura realm martial artists that they had bribed had both died at the hands of the Blue Dragon Society. This was equivalent to losing 2 internal aura realm martial artists. Chu Xiu secretly shook his head. This Zhang family really knew how to play. One thought that he could take advantage of them, while the other pretended to be the one being taken advantage of. In fact, they were scheming against the other. Previously, he had some doubts. How could the Zhang family of Daishan Commandery be so idiotic? How could they do something like inviting a wolf into their house? Even if they were really senile and muddle-headed to this extent, they should have replaced the Zhang family with someone else. Now, Chu Xiu and the others finally understood the reason. Everything was just a secret plot by the Zhang family of Daishan Commandery. It was just that the plot was a little too realistic, and they actually included their own people. Chapter 111. Chu Xiao and the others were too lazy to care about the Zhang family schemes and all kinds of bullshit tea. He just said indifferently, "It's better not to kill them. We can save some effort." Fire Slave and Wolf King didn't care either. Anyway, as long as they completed the task and got the reward, why would they care about anything else? At this time, Zhang Tianqi suddenly said, "This time, your task was to kill 8 inner invulnerability experts of the Zhang family, but now there are 3 alive, so you can save a lot of effort. Can you refund some of the reward?" Chu Xiao looked at Zhang Tianqi coldly. This guy still doesn't seem to understand what kind of place the Blue Dragon Society is. Fire Slave and Wolf King just sneered and didn't speak. Chu Xiao said coldly, "Ridiculous. When did the Blue Dragon Society spit out the things in our hands? Since you said it's a task, then I'll kill all 3 of them. It's not breaking the rules." Zhang Weiqi hurriedly said, "Tianqi is young and doesn't know how to speak. Please forgive me. The reward is as much as it should be, and the 3 of you have completed this task." Although the Azure Dragon Society worked for money, it was impossible for them to reason with a bunch of fiendish killers like them. The Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery only had 3 inner invulnerability realm warriors left, and one of them was bought by them with a lot of money. All of them were killed by Chu Xiao, so how could they annex them? Zhang Weiqi said to the remaining people of the Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery, "You and I are both from the Zhang family. You used to be the direct descendants, and we were the collateral descendants. But the Zhang family has already become like this, so why do we still need to distinguish between the collateral descendants and the direct descendants? Just surrender and join the Zhang family of Daishan Commandery. From now on, everyone will be a member of the Zhang family, regardless of the direct descendants or the collateral descendants." The people of the Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery looked at each other and could only put down their weapons helplessly. Now that Zhang Yuanfeng was dead, the Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery could be considered to be half-crippled. What else could they do but admit defeat? Anyway, the other side was also a member of the Zhang family, so it wasn't too embarrassing. A smile appeared on Zhang Weiqi's face. "If that's the case, then everyone should pack up and prepare to return to Mount Tai County with me." Just as the Zhang family was about to leave, Chu Xiao suddenly said, "Wait, you can leave, but you must leave your things behind." Zhang Weiqi's face revealed a trace of doubt. "What did you leave behind?" "Of course it's the wealth and resources brought by the Zhang clan of Linzhong Commandery." Zhang Weiqi's expression immediately changed. "Gentlemen, aren't you breaking the rules by doing this? This thing belongs to my Zhang family. Why should we leave it to your Blue Dragon Society?" He had already paid the Blue Dragon Society, but he knew that he wouldn't be able to get it back. However, he couldn't give the Zhang clan's items to them. The Zhang clan of Linzhong Commandery was a direct descendant of the Zhang clan. This time, the Zhang clan of Linzhong Commandery was mainly interested in the wealth and treasures in the hands of the Zhang clan of Linzhong Commandery. After all, the wealth and resources could be used by them, and the warriors of the Zhang clan of Linzhong Commandery still had to get rid of those who were disobedient and stubborn. Chu Xiao sneered. "Breaking the rules? If you didn't interfere, after killing the Zhang clan of Linzhong Commandery, the things they brought would naturally be ours. Now that you want to keep these people alive, you naturally have to leave the things behind. Is this rule enough?" Zhang Weiqi said in a deep voice, "If your Blue Dragon Society says this, then it's a bit unreasonable. We have already given you the commission for killing people, and now you want some extra income? Moreover, your Blue Dragon Society didn't have this rule before." Chu Xiao unsheathed the red sleeve blade in his hand and said indifferently, "There wasn't such a rule before, but since I said it, there will naturally be one." Seeing that Chu Xiao actually unsheathed his blade, Zhang Weiqi's expression suddenly changed. "What does your Blue Dragon Society mean by this? Do you want to do this to us? Do you not care about the reputation of the Blue Dragon Society? Being an assassin also required integrity. Leaking information about one's employer without permission or doing something like this was a big taboo. It was fine to do this once or twice or even more, but if it was done repeatedly and your reputation was completely spread, who would come looking for you to kill people? You might as well not be an assassin and directly become a bandit." The fire slave in the back also said in a low voice, "Brother Chu, the rules of the Blue Dragon Society indeed do not allow us to attack our employer. If the branch lord finds out, I'm afraid we won't have a good time." Hearing the fire slave say this, Zhang Weiqi immediately let out a sigh of relief. If it was only this assassin in front of him who had evil thoughts after seeing the money, then it would be fine. However, he was afraid that the entire Blue Dragon Society was like this, and he would be out of luck. However, on the other side, Chu Xiao sneered and said, "The Blue Dragon Society does not allow us to attack our employer, but don't forget, they just said that our mission has been completed. Since that's the case, then they are not our employer. The Blue Dragon Society's rules only say that we are not allowed to kill our employer, but it doesn't say that we can't temporarily act as a bandit, right? The two of you, this is a family's wealth and resources. Even if the three of us divide it equally, it will still be a lot. Don't worry about the branch lord. Such a small matter won't reach his ears. Moreover, do you think that with our current status in the branch lord will punish us because of such a small matter?" The fire slave and the wolf king looked at each other. What Chu Xiao said made sense. They were the first assassins to join the Heavenly Sin branch and had been in the Heavenly Sin branch for more than 2 years. They understood the branch lord's character very well. Although they were supposed to obey the Blue Dragon Society's rules before obeying the Heavenly Sin branch's rules, in the branch lord's eyes, as long as they listened to him, they could violate the Blue Dragon Society's rules. As long as it didn't spread to the headquarters, who would know? As a result, the three of them looked at Zhang Weiqi and the others with killing intent. Seeing this scene, Zhang Weiqi's expression became extremely ugly. The other party had already revealed their killing intent. Even if he was prepared to hand over the things, he reckoned that these assassins from the Blue Dragon Society wouldn't let him go. Run. Split up and run. Zhang Weiqi didn't have any intention of resisting. Although he hadn't fought with Chu Xiao and the others, he had seen Zhang Yuanfeng's decapitated corpse. One had to know that although the Zhang family of Mount Tai County was powerful, the Zhang family's main inheritance was still the Zhang family of Linzhong County. Zhang Yuanfeng's strength was definitely not weak. Therefore, the Zhang family of Mount Tai County had secretly schemed and bribed the other party to kill Zhang Yuanfeng in a sneak attack. But now, these 3 assassins from the Blue Dragon Society actually fought 3 against 8 and killed Zhang Yuanfeng so easily. If they didn't run, how could they fight? Moreover, Zhang Weiqi was old and didn't pay much attention to the gossip in the underworld. Otherwise, he would have been able to recognize Chu Xiao's identity from his mask. Facing a powerhouse who could step on the Longhu list, even if he knew that the other party wanted to kill him, he could only pinch his nose and accept it. Fire slave, you're the fastest. Go after the others. Don't let anyone go. Wolf King, kill the inner aura realm martial artists with me. After giving the order, Chu Xiao and Wolf King immediately attacked. Like tigers entering a flock of sheep, the other party couldn't resist their attacks at all. Zhang Weiqi's strength when he was young was still passable, but now that he was over 70 years old, his vital energy and blood were extremely weak. In just a few moves, Chu Xiao had sent his weapon flying. Then, he was struck in the chest by the great purple sun palm imprint. In an instant, the little vital energy and blood in his body had been completely burned away. During the slaughter, Zhang Tianqi saw that Zhang Weiqi was killed by Chu Xiao. His eyes revealed endless regret. Many people in the Zhang family, including Zhang Tianqi's father, thought that Zhang Weiqi and the other elders were old and muddle-headed. However, he was the one who first proposed to ask the Blue Dragon Society to help, so he was the one who dealt with Chu Xiao and the others. He didn't expect that the result would be like this. Unfortunately, it was useless to regret. The red sleeve blade in Chu Xiao's hand wandered in the boundless blood rain. It would take a lot of effort for an inner aura realm martial artist to block his blade, let alone an innate realm martial artist. Zhang Tianqi didn't have much time to regret. He was directly killed by Chu Xiao's blade. After a quarter of an hour, there was no one alive in the whole ruined temple. Wolf King panted slightly. His internal force had almost been consumed. After all, there were several inner aura realm martial artists and some innate realm martial artists. After such a slaughter, his physical strength and internal force were definitely consumed. Chu Xiao didn't feel anything. His foundation was amazing. The Xiantian skill and glass golden silk goo could ensure that his physical strength and internal breath were several times or even more than 10 times that of the same level martial artists. At this time, Fire Slave also returned to the mountain. He took a breath and said, "No one was left alive." Chu Xiao nodded and said, "Well, let's divide the things first, then move the corpses into the ruined temple and burn them. It's neat. Fire Slave and Wolf King both nodded. They took out the things carried by the Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery and checked them. They simply divided them into 3 parts according to their value, and each of them picked one at random. Of course, such a simple division of the 3 of them must have more or less. However, the 3 of them were not calculative people, so they just let it go. After taking the things, they gathered the corpses at the foot of the mountain together. Fire Slave put his hand on the doorpost of the ruined temple. The fire strength and gang qi condensed in his hand, making his hands turn red. Soon, the doorpost was set on fire, and finally the whole ruined temple was affected. Wolf King praised on the side, "It's really good to cultivate the internal force of fire attribute. You don't even need to take a flint to start a fire." After watching for a while, Chu Xiu and others directly turned around and left. It was normal to have a big fire occasionally on the barren mountain. It had been burned to such a state. No one could put out the fire unless there was a heavy rain. By the next morning, everything would have been reduced to ashes. Chapter 112. Chu Xiu didn't have any psychological burden doing such a thing. It wasn't the first time he did it anyway. Fire Slave and Wolf King were a bit nervous, but after returning to the Blue Dragon Society, they handed in the mission as usual. Sky Crime Branch leader didn't even ask. Right now, Sky Crime Branch was already very short of manpower. As a branch leader, he had a lot of things to do. How could he have time to care about other people's business? After receiving the mission commission, Chu Xiu immediately returned to his room and took stock of his income this time. Together with the commission and the things he got from destroying the Linzhong Commandery's Zhang family, Chu Xiu could be said to have made a lot of money this time. It was even more than what he earned from destroying the Yu family. Also, the Linzhong Commandery's Zhang family was a big family in the past. Although they were almost ruined in recent years, they still had some resources. For example, the quality of those pills was much better than ordinary pills of the same level. Other than the usual cultivation resources, Chu Xiu also found a strange item, which was stored in an open secret box. Because the material of the secret box was good, even if it was opened, it would be used as a container for storing items in some families. It was safer and more stable. At this time, what Chu Xiu found in the secret box was actually half a technique transmission scroll. That's right, only half a piece. As a legacy item, cultivation techniques actually contained many things. Most of them were written on paper, but there were also bamboo slips and even things like gold leaf. There was practically everything one could think of. For example, Chu Xiu's 2 volumes of the sorrowful yin and yang intersecting heaven and earth were written on the skin of an unknown beast. It was extremely bizarre. Compared to these things, the advantage of the technique transmission scroll was that it was convenient and fast. It could be imprinted into one's mind in an instant. But of course, the cultivation jade slips also had its disadvantages. For example, even if the cultivation technique was damaged on paper or other materials, a part of it could still be seen clearly. From there, some martial arts experts could even repair it to a perfect state through various deductions if there were only a few parts that were damaged. However, the technique impartation jade slip was different. The formation was inscribed in the center of the jade slip. Putting aside the fact that it was only half of the jade slip, even if there were a few cracks that damaged the formation in the center, it would not be possible to read the cultivation technique. It would have to be repaired first. Chu Xiu rubbed his chin and a thoughtful look appeared in his eyes. The jade slip was golden in color, and it was extremely dazzling and beautiful like amber. It was quite obvious that it was no ordinary item. Otherwise, the Zhang clan of the Forest Commandery wouldn't have treated it as a treasure and kept it in a secret box. However, the crux of the matter was that this was only half a technique transmission jade strip. It had been more than 10,000 years since the ancient times, and if there was only half of the technique transmission jade strip left, the chances of finding the other half would be close to 0. However, in the end, the Zhang clan still kept this half of the technique transmission jade slip and kept it in a secret box like a precious treasure. This time, the Zhang clan also brought this thing with them when they moved to Mount Tai County. What did this mean? It meant that in the eyes of the Zhang clan, they knew where the other half of the technique transmission jade slip was. Although they couldn't find it for the time being, they would be able to combine them one day. So where was this place? Thinking of the relationship between the Zhang clan of Mount Tai County and the Zhang clan of the Forest Commandery, Chu Xiu had a guess. Could the other half of the technique transmission jade slip be in the Zhang clan of Mount Tai County? This guess was not certain to Chu Xiu, but there was a 30% chance that it was possible. Even if there was only a 30% chance of success, it was enough for Chu Xiu to make another trip to the Zhang clan for the sake of such a high-quality cultivation transmission jade slip. Moreover, although the Zhang clan of Mount Tai County was originally quite strong, they had lost 3 internal invulnerability experts. With Chu Xiu's current strength, it would be very easy for him to get rid of them without much effort. Chu Xiu walked out of the door and happened to see Fire Slave in the central square. "Brother Chu, you didn't go to cultivate. Are you preparing to go out?" Fire Slave came over and greeted Chu Xiu. Since the last time they worked together, Fire Slave saw Chu Xiu's strength. Fire Slave's attitude towards Chu Xiu had risen to another level, second only to the degree of fawning over him. Among the assassins of the Heavenly Sin branch, Yan Bugui and Tang Ye were undoubtedly the 2 strongest. But the key was that one was cold and unsociable, and the other was eccentric and temperamental. Neither of them were normal people. Even if Fire Slave wanted to fawn over them, it would be impossible to carry out group missions with them. Only Chu Xiu was slightly more normal. As long as the benefits were enough, like the previous group mission, their cooperation was very good. In any case, it was definitely not a bad thing to have a good relationship with an expert like Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu nodded and said, "Last time we killed a few people from the Zhang clan of Mount Tai County. Although we burned the bodies, I was still afraid that they would find out something. This time, I am going to make a trip to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots." Fire Slave said doubtfully, "They have been burned to ashes. What can they find out?" Chu Xiu said lightly, "The other inner strength realm warriors of the Zhang clan should know that Zhang Tianqi and the others hired the Blue Dragon Society to rob and kill the Zhang clan of Linzhong County. Although there is no evidence, we are indeed the most suspicious. Kill them all, in case they go out and talk nonsense. Moreover, the Zhang clan of Mount Tai County also has some accumulation. They are tired of being assassins all the time. It is not bad to occasionally play the role of a bandit. Are you interested in coming with us?" Fire Slave didn't even think about it and shook his head. "Forget it. There are a lot of missions for the Blue Dragon Society. I am not as energetic as you. I still want to do other things. It was okay to loot some things while killing people. But in the case of no mission, he was too lazy to do it." A strange look appeared in Chu Xiu's eyes. He said, "Well, if you don't want to go, I will do it myself." The last mission was done by the 3 of them together. This time, if Chu Xiu secretly attacked Mount Tai County, when the news spread, Fire Slave and Wolf King would also suspect him. It was better for him to invite Fire Slave now. With the rewards of the Blue Dragon Society's mission and Fire Slave's character, he most likely wouldn't agree. And even if he agreed, Chu Xiu was not afraid. He had the art of extinguishing heaven, destroying earth and soul transferring. He could find out from the Zhang clan whether the other half of the technique transmitting jade slip was in their hands or not. If it was, Chu Xiu could also take the technique transmitting jade slip in his hand quietly. At this time, in the Zhang clan of Mount Tai County, after nightfall, 6 inner gang realm warriors of the Zhang clan were sitting in the meeting hall, frowning. In fact, it was their idea to hire the Blue Dragon Society to rob and kill the Zhang clan of Linzhong County. Even if Zhang Tianqi and the other juniors had the idea, they didn't have the power to mobilize most of the Zhang clan's resources and materials as a commission. The 6 of them were the backbone generation of the Zhang clan in their prime. But because the 3 elders of the Zhang clan still occupied their positions, they were only in charge of the clan's affairs. This time, they thought that the 3 elders were old and muddle-headed, and it was finally time to give up their positions. But who would have thought that the older the ginger, the wiser the ginger? They had already planned it, but they didn't tell them, leading to such a mistake. Later, the 3 elders of the Zhang clan took action together to stop the Blue Dragon Society from killing everyone. As a result, it had been nearly 10 days, and neither Zhang Tianqi nor the 3 elders of the Zhang clan had seen their shadow. One of the Zhang clan warriors frowned and said, "It's been so long, from Mount Tai County to Linzhong County. Why haven't they come back yet?" The eldest Zhang clan, who was sitting in the main seat, shook his head and said, "I don't know, but I've sent someone to look for them. I hope nothing happens to them." Because the Zhang clan of Mount Tai County was a collateral branch, there was no hierarchy in the clan. They didn't even have a master. Those who were strong and qualified could become elders, while the others were the stewards of the clan, each in charge of the clan's affairs. The advantage of this was that they could avoid being dragged down when the master was muddle-headed. But at the same time, if the elders didn't give up their positions, it would be difficult for them to gain real power. So now the eldest Zhang clan even had some dark thoughts in his mind. It would be better if the 3 Zhang clan elders never came back. An inner gangrel martial artist of the Zhang family shook his head and said, "This is a complete mess. The elders even hid it from us. Do they really think that we are so shallow that we will give ourselves away in front of the Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery? Now, even we have been deceived." The others didn't say anything. The elders treated them like children, worried that they were not shrewd enough. Didn't they also think that the elders were muddle-headed and made a wrong decision, which was why they secretly hired the assassins of the Blue Dragon Society to kill them? To put it simply, there was a lot of conflict within the Zhang clan of Mount Tai County. It was so serious that both sides didn't trust each other. Seeing that no one was paying attention to him, the warrior of the Zhang clan snorted coldly and said, "You guys continue to wait. I'm going out to get some fresh air." With that, the warrior of the Zhang clan directly left the meeting hall. After a while, the eldest Zhang clan frowned and said, "Where is the 4th prince? What the hell? Call him back. Let's discuss it. If we don't see him by tomorrow, we'll send some people to investigate again. This time, we'll inquire about a few more places." An inner gang realm warrior nodded and went out to call someone. However, he didn't come back for a long time. The 4 people present suddenly felt that something was wrong. The eldest Zhang clan's expression suddenly changed. In fact, something was wrong a long time ago. It was just that they were all thinking about why the Zhang clan elders and the others didn't come back, so they didn't notice it. The Zhang clan's mansion was so big, and the Zhang clan didn't have a curfew. It was possible that some of the Zhang clan's disciples would cause a ruckus in their own house even in the middle of the night. Some sounds would spread out, and even if they stayed in the meeting hall, they would still be able to hear it. In the end, they didn't know when the sounds around them gradually disappeared, and it began to become silent. The silence was terrifying. Chapter 113. By the time the 4 people from the Zhang family realized that something was wrong, it was already too late. However, they couldn't be blamed for their lack of vigilance. They were worried about the 3 elders of the Zhang family, and they were in their own family. Who could be so vigilant? Just as the Zhang family's eldest brother was about to get up, the door to the meeting hall was pushed open and 2 heads rolled in front of everyone. The faces of the Zhang family members changed abruptly. Those were the heads of the 2 Zhang family martial artists who had just left. Chu Xiao calmly walked into the house and sighed. "This soundproof array formation is really useful. It's a pity that it's a one-time use. By the way, does the Zhang clan of Mount Tai County have this thing?" Just now, Chu Xiao set up a soundproof array outside the Zhang family's meeting hall. It could isolate all sounds outside the array. It was also found by Chu Xiao from the things of the Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery. Ordinary small clans could not afford to support formation masters. The Linzhong Commandery's Zhang clan used to be a large clan, so they had quite a number of formations passed down. Unfortunately, the Zhang clan no longer had any formation masters. Formations were something that could only be used once. When it came to Chu Xiao, all that was left was the soundproof formation and other ordinary formations that were used. Kill! The eldest Zhang family didn't say anything else. He directly shouted and charged at Chu Xiao with the other 3. Although they didn't know why the assassins of the Blue Dragon Society wanted to deal with them, the other party had already killed 2 people from the Zhang family. This matter definitely couldn't be resolved peacefully. In fact, the eldest Zhang family was most afraid that the Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery would be in trouble. They also knew the rules of the Blue Dragon Society. If the hired assassins were killed by the target, the Blue Dragon Society wouldn't retaliate against the target. Instead, they would retaliate against the employer. Previously, they were the ones who hired the assassins of the Blue Dragon Society to kill the Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery. In the end, there was no news from the Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery. Even the 3 elders on their side had disappeared. Now, the assassins of the Blue Dragon Society suddenly attacked them. Could it be that they had misjudged the strength of the Zhang family of Linzhong Commandery, causing the assassins of the Blue Dragon Society to fail their mission? As a result, They were the target of revenge. If that really happened, even if they could defeat the assassin in front of them, they would still have to face trouble from the Zhang clan of Linzhong Commandery. But when they truly exchanged blows, Zhang family's eldest brother discovered that he was wrong, gravely wrong. What he was considering now was not how to defeat the assassin in front of him, but how to survive under the assassin's hands. They were both inner invulnerability realm martial artists, but the pressure that this assassin from the Blue Dragon Society gave him was almost the same as that of a physical invulnerability realm martial artist. The continuous knife strikes that were like crimson drizzle fell. The opponent seemed to be playing it down, but the result was that they had to expend a lot of effort to block even one strike. Just now, Zhang family's eldest brother shouldn't have shouted, "Kill." If he had shouted, "Flee," they might have had a chance. Chu Xiu's knife strikes were extremely strange and fierce. After Zhang family's eldest brother was forced into a desperate situation, the other three hurriedly came to his aid. However, at this time, Chu Xiu suddenly withdrew his knife and retreated, directly engaging in close combat. The great sacrificial grappling hand directly tore off the arm of a Zhang family martial artist that was holding a sword, and with one strike, he beheaded the martial artist. One of the people behind him condensed a crimson-red astral energy in his hands and attacked towards Chu Xiu's back. However, Chu Xiu directly turned around and blasted out with the great violet sun palm. His opponent was instantly sent flying, and his entire arm was purplish-black in color. The violet sun devil flames entered his body, and the powerful force erupted, causing him to howl miserably. "Run!" Zhang family's eldest brother shouted and frantically fled outside with another martial artist. But at this moment, the red sleeve saber in Chu Xiu's hand directly left his hand, and he threw it out with the powerful saber momentum of Return of the Azure Dragon. The power of piercing the sun and moon suddenly erupted, and a thick blood aura was attached to the blade. Although it was not gang energy, it could still be indirectly separated from the body. Zhang family's eldest brother subconsciously slashed out with his sword, wanting to deflect the red sleeve saber. Who knew that the blood aura on the red sleeve saber exploded when it was still a few feet away from him, directly blasting away the long sword in his hand. The saber blade pierced into Zhang family's eldest brother's chest, and he was abruptly nailed to the pillar of the hall. At this time, the last martial artist was about to escape from the door. His eyes flashed with endless horror. The person in front of him was simply terrifying. They were all in the inner invulnerability realm, but it was difficult for the Zhang family's people to even take 3 moves of the other party in a one-on-one fight. Now, with 4 against 1, they were still easily killed by the other party. But it didn't matter. If others died, he could still live. Their Zhang family still had thousands of disciples. As long as they could escape and shout, not to mention that the other party was only an inner invulnerability realm martial artist, even if the other party was a physical invulnerability realm martial artist, they could still use their lives to exhaust the other party to death. But the moment he pushed open the door of the meeting hall, Chu Xiu's figure was like a maggot attached to a bone. He stuck close to his back, and with the great sacrificial grappling hand, he directly twisted the other party's arm and threw him back into the meeting hall. In less than 10 minutes, 3 of the Zhang family's 4 people were already dead. Previously, the person who was hit by Chu Xiu's great purple sun hand could have survived, but unfortunately, he courted death himself. He didn't realize the horror of this domineering purple sun demonic flame, and he actually wanted to use his true qi to strangle the purple sun demonic flame. In the end, it caused the purple sun demonic flame to erupt, and in the end, it completely tore the other party's heart meridian. The survivor of the Zhang family, whose arms were twisted off, trembled and said, "Why did the Blue Dragon Society attack my Zhang family? Let me live. My Zhang family is willing to give you anything." In fact, the reason at the moment was no longer important. Anyway, he was the only inner invulnerability realm martial artist left in the Zhang family, and the 3 elders' lives were basically unknown. It was more important to save their lives first. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "I ask, you answer. It's that simple. Don't waste any time." The inner invulnerability realm martial artist nodded repeatedly. "Does your Zhang family have half a piece of technique transmission jade slip?" The Zhang family inner invulnerability realm martial artist thought for a moment, then nodded and said, "Yes." "What does it look like?" The Zhang family inner invulnerability realm martial artist frowned and pondered. There were so many things in their Zhang family's treasury. How could he remember everything clearly? After thinking carefully for a long time, the Zhang family inner invulnerability realm martial artist hesitated and said, "It seems to be amber, and it looks extraordinary. As for its specific origin, only the elders know." "Where is that technique transmission jade slip?" The Zhang family inner invulnerability realm martial artist hurriedly said, "In my Zhang family's treasury, the entrance is guarded by my Zhang family's disciples. An outsider like you can't enter at all. Even if you force your way in, you'll be discovered. Let me out, and I'll bring it to you. Don't worry, my martial arts are already crippled, so I definitely won't play tricks on you." "You really won't play tricks on me?" Chu Xiu asked. The Zhang family inner invulnerability realm martial artist nodded repeatedly. "That's true, but unfortunately, I don't believe it." As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Xiu directly pressed his palm on the other party's chest, and the purple sun devil flame entered his body. Even though Chu Xiu's palm strength was not great, it still made the other party endure the burning pain of the devil flame, lying on the ground and constantly wailing. However, because there was a soundproof formation, no matter how loud the commotion he made, the people outside could not hear it. When the Zhang family inner invulnerability realm martial artist had already lost consciousness from the pain, and did not even have the strength to wail, he could only keep twitching on the ground. Only then did Chu Xiu take action and pull out the purple sun devil flame. Lifting the martial artist's head, Chu Xiu displayed the art of extinguishing heaven and earth, extinguishing soul transfer. His eyes were like an abyss, constantly devouring the spirit of the martial artist, causing him to fall into it unknowingly. Chu Xiu's art of extinguishing heaven and earth, extinguishing soul transfer could only be considered to be at the initial level. It was basically impossible to completely control an inner invulnerability realm martial artist, so he had to completely torture the other party until he collapsed, and then take action when the other party's spirit was at its weakest. "Is the technique transmission jade slip in your Zhang family's treasury?" The martial artist stammered. "No, the treasury only has the usual cultivation resources. The truly precious treasures are all in the second level of the secret chamber under the back mountain." "How do we enter the secret chamber?" "There are 2 levels in the secret chamber. The 6 of us together can enter the first level, and the second level requires the keys of 3 elders." After speaking, Chu Xiu directly shattered the other party's heart meridian with one palm. Just now, Chu Xiu did not know whether what the other party said was true or not, but he was suspicious by nature, so he had to verify it himself before taking action. Now it seemed that it was true. This Zhang family martial artist was indeed playing tricks. If he let him go or left alone, it would attract a large number of Zhang family disciples. It was a pity that he did not expect Chu Xiu to have the art of extinguishing heaven and earth, extinguishing soul transfer. After being controlled by Chu Xiu, if he wanted to lie, he might as well bite his tongue and commit suicide. Of course, in front of Chu Xiu, even if he wanted to commit suicide, there was probably not much hope. After collecting the keys of the 6 people, Chu Xiu sighed in pity. The 3 Zhang family elders also had keys, but the person who searched them was not Chu Xiu. Moreover, they did not think of this at the time, so the keys were naturally destroyed. However, Chu Xiu's target was the cultivation transmission jade strip. He would think about it after obtaining it. He sneaked all the way to the secret chamber in the back mountain of the Zhang family. There was no one guarding this place. For a large clan like the Zhang family, which had been passed down for several generations, it was necessary for a crafty rabbit to have 3 burrows. Not only did the clan have 2 places to hide treasures, one in the dark and the other in the light, there were probably some places outside that had treasures and resources in case of emergencies. The secret chamber on the first level was not large, only several meters in radius. The various items inside were stored in secret boxes or other precious materials. Chu Xiu rummaged through them. Most of them were ordinary items. The real premium items should be on the second level. Unfortunately, with his current strength, it was almost impossible for him to break the door of the secret chamber. The other half of the cultivation transmission jade strip was also on this level. However, it was casually stored in a secret box and placed to the side. Clearly, the Zhang family of Mount Tai County did not attach much importance to this item and casually threw it to a corner. After sweeping the Zhang family's secret chamber clean, Chu Xiu turned and left, setting the Zhang family's meeting hall on fire. Chapter 114. The fire buried 6 Zhang family's inner aura realm warriors. because of the soundproof array. The other Zhang family members only discovered it when the fire in the meeting hall spread to the extent of a big fire. However, it was already too late. 6 inner Aura Realm warriors were inexplicably killed and burned to the ground. The entire Zhang family was in a complete mess. Of course, Chu Xiu was too lazy to continue pursuing these matters. He took the cultivation jade slip that had already been broken in half and prepared to find someone to repair it. The cultivation jade slip had been broken in half. If it wasn't repaired, it would be impossible to read the cultivation method within. Repairing the cultivation jade slip required an array master. There was an array master in the Heavenly Sin branch, and that was the Ghost Hand King. In fact, the Ghost Hand King could only be considered a half-baked array master. He had learned arrays for a period of time, and he even knew medicine, hidden weapons, and other miscellaneous things. He was like a clown in a vaudeville, and he could often take out many strange things. Repairing the cultivation jade slip wasn't too complicated. With the Ghost Hand King's attainments in arrays, he should be able to do it. However, Chu Xiu didn't feel at ease giving this to the Ghost Hand King. The relationship between the hitmen of the Azure Dragon Society could be described as simple, but it could also be described as complicated. When there was no conflict of interest, they got along well, but when there was a conflict of interest, it was hard to say what would happen. To put it simply, Chu Xiu didn't trust the Ghost Hand King, and he wouldn't use a treasure to test the character of others. However, even if he couldn't give it to the Ghost Hand King, it didn't mean that Chu Xiu had no other way. He didn't know other array masters, but it didn't mean that others didn't know. Previously, Wind Sweeping Tower's wind middleman, Lu Yu, gave Chu Xiu a way to contact him. As the Wind Sweeping Tower's wind middleman, Lu Yu definitely had this information. Although Wind Sweeping Tower had a good reputation, Chu Xiu couldn't fully trust Lu Yu. However, compared to finding the Ghostly Hand King, the only good thing about Lu Yu was that his strength was lower. Chu Xiu was confident that he could control him. Lu Yu had a place to stay in Mount Tai County. Although Chu Xiu no longer had a wanted order on him, it was best for him not to show his face in public. Therefore, Chu Xiu only left a mark in one of the places according to Lu Yu's contact information and stayed in a dilapidated temple on a barren mountain. When Lu Yu saw the mark, he immediately came over. "May I know why official Chu is looking for me?" Lu Yu's face was full of joy. He really didn't expect that not long after he took the initiative to get to know Chu Xiu, business would come knocking on his door so quickly. Chu Xiu said directly, "I have a technique transmission jade slip, but it has been broken in half. Now I need to find an array master to repair it." After listening, Lu Yu immediately said, "Official Chu, don't worry. Although most of the array masters are in the sect, there are still some array masters who don't like to be restrained, so they act alone. I promise that I will find an array master with the best array Dao for you, official Chu." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "The array master I want doesn't need to be very skilled in array Dao. It's just repairing the technique transmission jade slip. It's not too difficult. What I need is a reliable array master. The most important thing is that he is reliable." In the anemophilia industry, Lu Yu's brain was the most flexible. From Chu Xiu's tone, he could hear what Chu Xiu meant. Lu Yu was just worried that the technique transmission jade slip in his hands would be secretly read or changed by an array master. Lu Yu thought for a while and said, "Official Chu, I really do have someone here who meets official Chu's requirements. When the time comes, official Chu, you will definitely be satisfied." After saying that, Lu Yu brought Chu Xiu to find that array master. However, when they arrived, Chu Xiu was a little surprised. The array masters of loose cultivators were also array masters. Basically, those who could become array masters were not poor. Basically, some small sects would even line up to ask the array master to help them set up array formations. At the same time, those famous blacksmiths were the same. Many cultivators would bring treasures and materials to ask the array master to forge a weapon for them. This was a very common thing. However, this time, Lu Yu brought Chu Xiu to a rundown town. It looked like an ordinary and dilapidated courtyard. This did not look like the residence of an array master. Lu Yu was too lazy to even knock on the door. He directly pushed the door open and said loudly, "Old Huang, I have business for you, and it is a big business." In the courtyard, an old man in his 60s walked out slowly. He was dressed in ordinary clothes but looked very neat. When he saw Chu Xiu in the courtyard, a strange look appeared in his eyes. He said, "Someone from the Blue Dragon Society? Lu Yu, you brat. You couldn't have tricked this big shot from the Azure Dragon Society, could you? Don't you know what I look like now?" After saying that, the old man cupped his hands at Chu Xiao and said, "Lord, although this old man used to be an array master, he is now useless. Don't be fooled by this kid. This old man can't even set up the lowest array formation now." When Lu Yu heard this, he immediately became angry. "Old Huang, I was kind enough to introduce you to business, and you actually doubt me? When have I, Lu Yu, ever fooled others? Not to mention, this is the top assassin of the Blue Dragon Society, Blood Demon, Chu Xiao, Official Chu. Official Chu only wants to repair a cultivation jade slip. It's very simple. Don't tell me your hands are so shaky that you can't even repair a cultivation jade slip? That old Huang had already retired from the world for many years. What blood demon? What Chu Xiao? He didn't know a single thing. However, after hearing that the assassin from the Azure Dragon Society only wanted to repair a cultivation transmission jade slip, Old Man Huang nodded and said, "That's not a problem. However, different cultivation transmission jade slips require different amounts of time. The higher the grade of the cultivation technique, the more information it contains, and the more formation arrays it contains. As a result, the time required will be longer as well." Lu Yu said to Chu Xiao, "Official Chu, although this old Huang's cultivation base has been crippled, his skill in the array Dao is still there. He can't set up a formation, but repairing a cultivation jade slip shouldn't be a problem. And with his current state, even if he swallowed your cultivation jade slip, it wouldn't be of any use." Lu Yu and Old Huang seemed to be very familiar with each other. Old Huang didn't seem to mind him saying that he was crippled in front of him. He could more or less understand why this Blue Dragon Society assassin had come looking for him to repair his cultivation jade slip. Old Huang bitterly smiled at Chu Xiao and said, "Lord, you've also seen my current state. At my peak, I was at the Xiantian realm, but now I can't even maintain my blood condensation realm. Setting up a formation also requires inner qi as the foundation. With my current strength, I can't even set up a formation. At most, I can only help others repair formations. So please don't worry, Lord. Even if the cultivation jade slip you want me to repair contains a peerless divine art, a cripple like me won't be able to cultivate it. Furthermore, I've been a formation master for half my life. I know what I can do and what I can't do." Glancing at Old Huang, Chu Xiao nodded and said, "That's fine. Then I'll leave it to you. Don't worry, as long as you can help me repair this cultivation jade slip, the reward will not be small." Chu Xiao was quite satisfied with Old Huang's help. A cripple was much more reliable than a highly skilled formation master. Furthermore, repairing a cultivation jade slip was a simple matter. Even a highly skilled formation master wouldn't be able to do it much faster. The most important thing was that Old Huang's strength was very weak. He had barely reached the blood condensation realm, but in a real fight, he probably wouldn't even be able to beat someone who had only learned martial arts for a few days. Chu Xiao was still used to being in control of everything. If Lu Yu found an internal Qi realm cultivator with a large group of formation masters, Chu Xiao wouldn't be able to trust them. Taking out the two halves of the cultivation jade slip, Chu Xiao handed it to Old Huang and said, "This is the cultivation jade slip. How long will it take to repair it?" Old Huang looked at it carefully and said, "This cultivation jade slip is not simple. There are many formation runes inside, and they are at least at the 5th revolution. It will take a long time to repair, around 2 to 3 months. During this time, Lord can wait here. Of course, it's fine even if you leave." This old man wouldn't dare to play any tricks in front of Lord. The repair time was much longer than Chu Xiao had expected. He had thought it would only take a few days. "I'll leave it with you for now. This is the deposit." Saying that, Chu Xiao tossed a piece of purple gold to Old Huang. At the same time, he tossed one to Lu Yu as a deposit. Seeing the purple gold, Old Huang's eyes immediately lit up. He did not lack ordinary valuables. After all, he was once an innate realm formation master. He would not starve to death. However, purple gold was a strange metal that could be used for setting up formations and refining artifacts. It was a hard currency, and it was not easy to obtain a piece. "Lord, please rest assured. This old man will definitely use the fastest speed to repair this cultivation jade slip." Old Huang received the purple gold and cupped his hands with a face full of joy. Chu Xiu nodded and left the town with Lu Yu. When they separated, Lu Yu cupped his hands and said to Chu Xiu, "Lord, please rest assured. Old Huang is still trustworthy. Furthermore, he won't attract attention here and will be absolutely safe." Chu Xiu glanced at Lu Yu and said indifferently, "It's fine. I believe in my own strength as well." After saying that, Chu Xiu's figure moved, and he left. Sensing Chu Xiu's ice-cold gaze, Lu Yu immediately felt a chill run down his spine. He understood what Chu Xiu meant. If something happened to the cultivation jade slip, not to mention Old Huang, even he would be implicated. Chu Xiu believed in his own strength. Hence, he did not care about wind-sweeping pavilion's background. He looked at the purple gold in his hand and weighed it in his hand. It was about 10 taels of silver. Just the deposit alone was already quite a lot. However, Lu Yu still shook his head. It was not easy to deal with this group of fiendish Blue Dragon Society assassins. This money was not easy to earn. Chapter 115. After Chu Xiu returned to the Blue Dragon Society, Fire Slave and Wolf King both knew what Chu Xiu had done. However, they were smart enough not to ask Chu Xiu what he had obtained from the Zhang family in Daishan County. The freedom of the Heavenly Sin branch was still very high. There were so many tasks that they could choose from. In addition, they did not have the strength that Chu Xiu had to look down on a clan. This kind of thing was something that Chu Xiu could do, but they could not. After returning, Chu Xiu did not choose to carry out the task. Instead, he continued to stay in the Blue Dragon Society to cultivate and digest all the things he had obtained from the Zhang family. Chu Xiu never accumulated things like cultivation resources. He always used them when he had them, and when he ran out of them, he would take on tasks and continue to earn cultivation resources. From the inner invulnerability stage to the physical invulnerability stage required the most cultivation resources. On the contrary, from the physical invulnerability stage to the 3 flowers at one's prominence or the 5 cheese origin stage, what was needed was not a large number of cultivation resources, but one's own potential and comprehension. Just as Chu Xiu was almost done with his cultivation and was about to come out, the Ghost Hand King suddenly called Chu Xiu and asked him to go to the square to wait for the Heavenly Sin branch leader. When Chu Xiu arrived at the square, he found that 80% of the killers in the Heavenly Sin branch were gathered there. Moreover, all the killers above level 4 with code names were there. Chu Xiu asked Fire Slave in a low voice, "What's going on?" Fire Slave chuckled and said, "There should be a big group mission. Otherwise, we wouldn't all be called here. Looking at the current scale, this group mission is not small." After a while, the Heavenly Sin branch leader walked out and said to everyone present in a deep voice, "The branch recently accepted a level 6 extermination mission. I was prepared to go personally, but I was entangled with other more difficult missions and couldn't get away. So this time, the mission will be handed over to you. You don't need to contact the employer. Just kill them." As he spoke, Sky Crime branch leader gave everyone a copy of the mission brief. There was only the mission objective and no information about the employer. Looking at the mission brief, Chu Xiu had a strange expression on his face. How much hatred did the person who issued the mission have with the other party? This task was very simple. The elder of the Spirit Sword sect, the #1 sect in the Autumn Ridge County, Hidden Spirit Sword, Yao Nanqian, was ready to retire from the Jianghu. He was going to hold a washing his hands in a golden basin ceremony at the Yao family manor in the Autumn Ridge County. What the Blue Dragon Society wanted to do was to kill Yao Nanqian and destroy the Yao family before the golden basin washing ceremony was completed. It had to be said that this mission was quite vicious. Washing his hands in a golden basin meant that he would completely withdraw from the martial arts world. He would let go of all his grudges and prepare for retirement. However, the employer wanted him to die before he could prepare for retirement. This could be said to be a huge grudge. Moreover, it was not an exaggeration to set this mission as a level 6 mission. Although the strength of the Yao family was not strong, with only Yao Nanqian being a physical invulnerability martial artist, if they made a move during the Golden Basin washing ceremony, someone would definitely intervene in this matter. Not to mention, although the sect leader of the Spirit Sword sect would not come, he would send other physical invulnerability elders or deacons. Moreover, the Spirit Sword sect was the #1 sect in the Qiuling County, and Yao Nanqian was also a senior who had been in the martial arts world for decades. There would probably be a lot of people who would come to participate in his golden basin washing ceremony. Among those people who would just watch from the sidelines and who would make a move, it was still unknown. Therefore, setting this mission as a level 6 mission was not only the intention of the Blue Dragon Society, but also the choice of the employer. The Heavenly Sin branch leader looked at the crowd and said, "For this mission, all the assassins above level 4 must go. The rest of the assassins below level 4 must also go. For this kind of large-scale group mission, there must be a temporary commander. Who among you will take this position?" The Ghost Hand King, Fire Slave, Wolf King, and the others exchanged a look, then they all kept their silence and remained silent. They were only in the inner aura stage. Usually, they could be the commander when they brought other innate stage assassins to carry out the mission. However, now there were 3 more powerful existences, so of course, they could not steal this limelight. Cruel Sword Yen Bugue directly said, "I'm not interested." He could kill people, but with his character, if he really wanted to be the commander, perhaps he would only say the word, kill. His style of doing things was very simple and crude. Everyone present set their eyes on Chu Xiao and Tang Ye. In the past, when they carried out the mission, Tang Ye was the temporary commander, and with his physical invulnerability, he was one of the strongest in the Heavenly Sin branch. However, the mission of exterminating the Yu family by Chu Xiao was too dazzling. With the power of one person, he was able to directly exterminate the entire Yu family. It could be seen that Chu Xiao's ability in strategy. Therefore, it was a difficult problem to decide who should be the leader of these 2 people. The Heavenly Sin branch leader looked at the 2 of them and suddenly said, "Last time, Chu Xiao's performance in exterminating the Yu family was not bad. Moreover, the employer requested us to make the mission a little bigger. Chu Xiao's reputation in the Jianghu should be a little bigger. Therefore, this time, Chu Xiao will be the leader. Tang Ye, do you have any objections?" Tang Ye only smiled and said casually, "I will obey Lord Branch Leader's orders." Chu Xiao also cupped his hands expressionlessly and said, "Understood." This branch leader had used too many methods to keep his subordinates in check. His identity as a commander was limited to this operation, and did not have any actual power. Just for such a small matter, he still wanted to sow discord between him and Tang Ye, both openly and secretly. In fact, Division Leader Heavenly Sin could have given this mission to Chu Xiao. However, Division Leader Heavenly Sin had asked for Tang Ye's opinion at the end, which carried a strong sense of alienation and provocation. It made Tang Ye feel that he was inferior to Chu Xiao. Division Leader Heavenly Sin even hinted that if Tang Ye did not agree, he could say it out loud. Actually, the Heavenly Sin branch leader did this only because Chu Xiao had been too close to Ghost Hand King and the others recently. The Heavenly Sin branch leader did not want his subordinates to kill each other, but at the same time, he did not want them to be too close. Right now, it was fine that Chu Xiao was close to Ghost Hand King and the others, but he did not want his 3 strongest assassins to be so close as well. This was all guessed by Chu Xiao, but he did not say anything. There was no need to ruin the Heavenly Sin branch leader's reputation for such a small matter. As for whether Tang Ye bore a grudge against him or not, Chu Xiao did not care about it. As long as the other side did not carry out the grudge in his heart, Chu Xiao naturally could not be bothered to care about them. In other words, ever since Chu Xiao stepped into the Jianghu, he had killed many people and offended even more people. There were many people who secretly bore grudges and even wanted to kill him. Right now, he did not care about this one. The Heavenly Sin branch leader nodded his head in satisfaction and said, "Since this is the case, you all should act quickly. The earlier you complete the mission, the more missions the branch has accumulated." Understood. The assassins present all replied respectfully. Outside the Anyang prefecture of the Autumn Ridge County, the Yao family village was located near a small lake outside the Anyang prefecture. The scenery was very beautiful. Previously, the Yao family village had been relatively low-key. However, today, because Yao Nanqian was going to hold the washing of hands in a golden basin ceremony, the Yao family village could be said to be very lively. Outside the Yao family village, several of Yao Nanqian's sons were greeting the guests at the entrance. The guests were all disciples from the big sects, and there were also some martial artists from small sects or loose cultivators who came to watch the ceremony. Of course, their treatment was not as polite as those from the big sections. Usually, they would just send the congratulatory gifts and then enter the village to find a place to sit. Yao Nanqian's reputation in the martial arts world of the Autumn Ridge County was relatively big. He should be the most senior in the Spirit Sword sect. Moreover, he was also well known for his love of guiding the younger generation. It could be said that he was a highly respected elder in Jianghu. Coupled with the power and influence of the Spirit Sword sect, the number of people who came today was not small. Moreover, the washing of hands in a golden basin ceremony was not common in the Jianghu. Many people came with curiosity to watch the ceremony. Actually, most of the martial artists who said that they would retire from the Jianghu were just looking for a quiet place to live out their retirement. They would not hold any ceremony because this thing was too important. Once the washing of hands in a golden basin ceremony was held, it meant that you could no longer meddle in any Jianghu affairs. Your contacts, your relationship, and your prestige in the Jianghu would be completely washed away along with the washing of hands in a golden basin. After washing of hands in a golden basin, meddling in the Jianghu affairs would be a violation of the rules. Even if it was Yao Nanqian's son who wanted to borrow Yao Nanqian's power, he would not be able to do so. It could be said that this washing of hands in a golden basin completely washed away the identity of a Jianghu person. Of course, there were also benefits. After washing of hands in a golden basin, he would be recognized by all parties. Even those who had a grudge against him could no longer come to find trouble with him. Otherwise, that would be a violation of the rules of the Jianghu, and he would be attacked by everyone. The Jianghu disciple and the Jianghu veteran stepped into the Jianghu. No matter if they were good or bad, once they realized the power and influence, who would want to return to their family and be a rich man? Who would want to put down the sword in their hand and let it rust in the corner? Other places might not know, but at least in Qiuling County, in the past decade or so, Yao Nanqian was the first person to hold the washing of hands in a golden basin ceremony. He had officially washed his hands in a golden basin in front of many Jianghu people and retired from the Jianghu. As for the others, most of them were just selling dog meat. They said that they were going to retire from the Jianghu, but there was no telling when they would come back to the Jianghu for some reason, just like Su Chongyang, who had been killed by Chu Xiu. Inside the Yao clan manor, Lu Yu carried a fan on his back and waved it in his hand. He wobbled around the Yao clan manor, greeting all the cultivators he knew and did not know. He was an anemophilia under the Wind-Sweeping Tower's Daishan County branch. However, there were some problems with the Wind-Sweeping Tower in Qiuling County, so it was temporarily under the jurisdiction of Daishan County. Now that such a big thing had happened, he naturally had to come and take a look so that he could get first-hand information. At this moment, a few unaffiliated martial artists who were on good terms with Lu Yu saw him approaching. They all greeted him and said, "Brother Lu, I knew that you would be needed at such an occasion. Come. Come and sit. Tell us about the inside story of old Master Yao's retirement from the Jianghu this time." Lu Yu walked over and sat down. He used his fan to point at the main entrance and said, "Don't be anxious. The big shots haven't all arrived yet. Today is a big event that you guys can only see once in a decade. It's enough for you to brag about. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.